I'm coming home to Rotoworld. I'm bringing Rotoworld back. We're bringing Rotoworld back, guys. Rotoworld's coming back.
That's right. We are reunited, and it feels so good. Shout out to Peaches and Herb. What's good? Actually, the better question is, do you want to be great? Of course you want to be great. Of course you want to win your league. That is why you are here with us. Welcome. I am Michael Smith to the 2022 Rotoworld Fantasy Football Draft Guide Show. We have got everything you could possibly need to dominate your league. Rankings, sleepers, strategies. We got guests. We got Chris Sims. We got Mike Florio. We got Peter King and more from rotoworld.com. But most important, we got the man himself, Matthew Berry, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, my friend, to
Good
NBC
to
Sports. Welcome to the other side.
Right.
Hello from the other side. Welcome to NBC Sports.
You did that journey before me, my friend. I am happy to be here. I am thrilled to be here, thrilled to be coming home to Rotoworld. I don't know how many people know, but I started my career at Rotoworld, and so it is a homecoming for me. It's a full circle moment. Couldn't be more thrilled, Michael. And you and I have chopped it up before, doing fantasy broadcasts elsewhere. So it's so much fun to be doing this, not just here, but here with you.
Thank you, man. We'll be doing this every Sunday morning, getting you set your lineups to dominate your day, dominate your league, as I mentioned. This is great, man. Like I said before, I feel like I'm Derek Carr and you're Devontae Adams. We gave you a boatload of money. We traded for you. I don't know what else we gave up to get you, but we feel like we have definitely upgraded our roster by adding the one and only talented Mr. Roto to the NBC Sports family. It's just really good to have you, man. Congratulations on the move. But listen, let's get down to business. And before we start to get to specifics with your rankings and with particular players and their situations, let's call them Rotoworld reminders.
Yeah, sure.
Some macro principles that people should keep in mind as they draft. And we're mostly approaching this from a redraft league, a snake format, not so much from an auction format, but nonetheless, just general principles people should keep in mind.
Fantasy football is all about, if they take nothing else away from this show, take this. Fantasy football is all about putting yourself in the best position to win on a weekly basis. That's it. Minimizing odds and putting yourself in the best position to win. That's it. Like it is a fluky game. Weird stuff's going to happen. So all you can do is minimize odds and put yourself in the best position to win on a weekly basis. We hear everyone talk about these season-long stats.
Right.
But your goal in fantasy football and season-long fantasy football is to beat one team in 1 week that's ahead of you, that you're playing that week, right? And so ultimately, listen, the Cooper Kupps of the world, the Jonathan Taylors of the world, that's great, guys that dominate week in, week out.
Yeah.
But that's not likely the case, okay? Like, think about last year, okay? Last year, weeks 9 through 12, Devontae Freeman, Mark Ingram, and Darrell Williams were all top 16 fantasy running backs last year.
Yeah.
For a month.
Yeah.
At this time last year, again, Devontae Freeman was sitting on his couch.
Yeah.
And Darrell Williams was like a not even thought of Kansas City Chief backup. The fact is that throughout the year, there will be weeks where you have to build your roster and you'll use the waiver wire, you'll make trades, players go up, players go down. Think about Amon-Ra St. Brown over the final 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
So that's my point, is understand as you go into your draft, this is a weekly game. And you do not need to come out of your draft with a roster that you're going to start every single week, because that's impossible.
Right.
What you need is a foundation and a blueprint of building blocks that you can add to throughout the season, off of the waiver wire, off of trades, as players emerge.
So what you're saying is the work is just beginning, but it doesn't end here. Yes, you are tuned in to the Rotoworld Fantasy Football Draft Guide Show, and yes, you will be watching us on Sunday mornings, fantasy football pregame, but you also want to watch this man weekdays, fantasy football happy hour. You got to manage this roster. This draft this team you're about to draft, you got to manage it as the year goes on. All right, so that's rule number one, a reminder number one.
Happy hour, tailgate. Are you sensing a theme yet? Are you sensing a theme?
Bar?
You see the bar?
Here we are. You know,
listen, it's fantasy. Let's have some fun. We're pre-gaming here.
All right.
Absolutely.
Rule number two that you wanted to touch on is don't overreact to rookies, which is really hard because there's so much hype this time of year coming out of training camp.
Yeah, I think Jamar Chase, awesome, right? Justin Jefferson the year before that, amazing rookie seasons, historic even. But that's the problem is that I think there's too much hype on rookies. Now, there's a lot of rookies that I think are interesting this year. The Drake Londons, the George Pickens of the world, 100%, right? Chris Olave, right? We'll talk about them as we get into the show. But there's not shooting for a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson just isn't realistic. For every guy like that, right? There's guys like Devontae Smith, right? Or Rashad Bateman, or Terrace Marshall, or Elijah Moore. Remember all the hype Elijah Moore was getting last preseason?
Yeah.
Like they all showed flashes last year at certain. Well, maybe not Marshall, but the rest of them did, right? But
this game's hard,
right? Kadarius Toney had one or two good weeks, but generally speaking, do not overreact to rookie wide receivers. I will say, however, I do think it's worth drafting them, and then it takes a while for rookies to get it. So if you do end up with a rookie, patience. Again, think about the last 6 games of Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown last year over the final 6 games was a top 3 fantasy wide receiver. Think about Jalen Waddle down the stretch. They were both great. So if you do draft a rookie, patience, because it takes them a while to get used to the NFL, and realize that the Jamar Chases and Justin Jeffersons of the world is much more the exception than the rule.
Absolutely. And patience is not one of my virtues. As
No,
you
I
know, from
know.
facing me in fantasy,
Oh, my God.
I blow up my team.
No, you have no
almost
idea.
Like one weekend. I'm the most impatient man.
I've been in many leagues with Michael Smith over the years. It's all I can say to America. Find somebody that looks at you the way Michael Smith looks at the waiver wire.
And trades.
Right, I mean, in trades. Like always,
man.
constantly working the phones.
Right. Reminder number 3 is pay close attention to QB upgrades.
Yeah, I think the best example, of course, is that Cooper Kupp. Think about, obviously, a historic record-setting season for Cooper Kupp, who went from Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford. Massive upgrade. So what wide receivers this year, and we're going to get into it further on later in the show, but you just think about some wide receivers this year that are getting a quarterback upgrade, including Cooper Kupp's new teammate, Allen Robinson, who goes from, the mess that was Chicago last year to Matthew Stafford. DJ Moore now with Baker Mayfield in Carolina. That's an upgrade over what he had last year. Terry McLaurin's going to play with the best quarterback he's ever played with in his career. Deontay Johnson, I argue that what they have in Pittsburgh is an upgrade over Big Ben from last year. Marquise Brown, Lamar's great. I think Kyler's a little bit better, right? And they have more of a connection. Michael Pittman, I think Ryan's slightly an upgrade over Carson Wentz. The Denver guys. Massive upgrade getting Russell Wilson for Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. Julio Jones goes from Ryan Tannehill to Tom Brady. So I think don't underestimate the importance of being with a good quarterback or a good offense. We want to target players, obviously, on good offenses, good coaching, everything like that. And we're going to get into all this throughout the next however long we're going to be here.
Hey, just quick follow-up to that. Do you also use that philosophy when it comes to running backs or even defenses? Just like the rising tide floats all boats, I guess you could say, but just what a difference a quarterback makes throughout an organization. So do you look at running backs that get quarterbacks and say, okay, they can throw the ball better, which takes pressure and fewer people in the box, or on defense, maybe they're playing with a lead, that sort of thing.
1,000%, all of that. I mean, again, look at Leonard Fournette in Tampa Bay with Tom Brady. Look at Leonard Fournette in Jacksonville. I mean, right? I mean, like when you have a good quarterback, you are in scoring position more often. Often, as you said, defenses now suddenly have to pay attention to everything. They can't just stack the box like if you've got a bad quarterback. And so, a good quarterback, yes, rising tide floats all boats. 100% there.
All right. Reminder number 4. This is especially important. This may have been number 1. Shout out to Biggie Smalls. This rule should have been number 1. Don't overreact to preseason, because that's where we're at right now. Recency bias comes into play with these drafts. You're drafting this time of year. You're watching training camp. You're watching preseasons. It's really hard not to overreact to what we're seeing in the here and now.
It is, but I think Jamar Chase, speaking of him, is just a great lesson. Last year, he had a couple of bad drops. They're like, oh, this guy can't catch. And people were dropping him.
The ball is different.
Right, exactly. Like, he's been out of football for a year. Like, that's what happened, right? I mean, so, think about the, preseason superstars, the Darwin Thompsons. Remember Darwin? Like, everyone's all about Isaiah Pacheco right now in Kansas City, and he's having a great camp, and understandably, there's some buzz there. But, like, a couple years ago, everyone was talking about Darwin Thompson. Now, Pacheco and Thompson are very differently built running backs, and I have more confidence in Pacheco than I did in Thompson back then. But still, the point is that there absolutely are nuggets that you can glean from the preseason, things that are important in terms of usage and what players are being in certain personnel groups. But you don't want to overreact, okay? It's week 1. Like, Antonio Gibson is not suddenly going to the bench. People are all very worried now about Antonio Gibson because He played in the third quarter. He had a bad fumble, right? And Brian Robinson got the goal line carry and converted the touchdown. Antonio Gibson's going to be fine, okay? I'm telling you, I believe he'll be fine. Treylon Burks, everyone's ready to throw fantasy dirt on the grave of Treylon Burks' fantasy value, and it's like it's 1 week.
Yeah.
Like they're going to need pass catchers. So my point is like preseason can be helpful. Tune in to the show every single day on Peacock and the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. We'll be doing the podcast. We'll be talking and sifting through this throughout the season starting August 22nd. But people have a tendency to overreact. It's just preseason.
And finally, this is a buzzword you hear in actual drafts. It's applicable to fantasy drafts. Upside.
Yeah, look, first couple rounds, we always say you can't lose your draft you can't win your draft in the first 2 rounds. You can lose it. So when you're early on, you want to go safe, but otherwise, you want to go upside, right? Talladega Nights, it's Ricky Bobby, right? We say if you ain't first, you last, right? That's the thing. Like no one remembers second,
right. No
one remembers third. So flags fly forever. So I think you want to swing for the fences, and so for me, I spend a lot of time on my rankings.
Yeah.
And even when I'm in a draft, I use them as a loose guideline. Every draft is different. Every situation is different. How players come into your team and what other teams are doing in the draft or in a salary cap format, you need to react on the fly. And the minute the games start playing, those rankings are out the window. You know what I mean? And so ultimately, I'm a big believer in sort of get the guys you want, use the rankings as a loose guideline, but ultimately it's your team.
Thank you.
Get the guys you want. Don't be beholden to the ranking.
I'm so
and
glad
this is a guy who does rankings for a living.
That's your job. Yeah, no, I'm so glad
and I'm
you said
telling
that.
you that.
And I was going to add
Get your
that.
guys.
Get the guys you want to watch. It's supposed to be fun.
This is fun. We're
Get the
bar.
players you want to tune in on Sundays and hey, I like this team. I want to be a part. I want a piece of the Buffalo offense or a piece of the Kansas City offense. Just get the guys that are going to be fun to watch that you want to root for, not the guys that the experts tell you are 2 spots higher than the other guy. I love that.
Right.
So
at this time last year, no one, and by no one, I mean not any fantasy analyst, not any fan, not anyone in the NFL knew Cordero Patterson had a top 12 fantasy running back season in him.
Yeah.
Like he was on his 8th team, right?
Yeah.
And the Falcons, by the way, they went into the season thinking Mike Davis was going to be their guy.
Yeah.
But Cordero Patterson, you never know. Get your guys, use the rankings as a loose guideline, have some fun very quickly.
Swing for the fences, yeah.
I do think insurance is important. We're in an era of COVID. You remember last year, week 15, Austin Eckler, Travis Kelce, a lot of big names were out. So I think it's important to have insurance. And I also think that, look, again, you want, as we talk about it being a weekly game, the Alexander Madisons, the Tony Pollards of the world, the important part is knowing if one of your guys goes down, who to start. And so the upside of those players, the Madisons, the Pollards of the world, the Isaiah Spiller of the Chargers, guys like that I think are important to have, especially given the nuttiness of the world we live in.
All right. You know what? Top of the show, we got to start at the top. You mentioned going safe in the first round or 2.
Yep.
The tried and true method is to attack running back, 3 down, bell cow, feature running back, which is close to being extinct nowadays with a number of running backs by committee, to say nothing of the injury rate at the position. But nonetheless, running backs dominate the top of your rankings and everybody else's rankings. Having said that, I'd like to focus on 3 names in particular near the top of your rankings at the running back position, because even though they have a great body of work, there are question marks around them. Starting with your number 2, and that's Christian McCaffrey, who's played in 10 games combined the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't understand at all what Yahoo drafters are thinking, right? He's currently going 5th.
They're worried about what I just said.
Well,
He's been hurt.
but then he shouldn't be going 5th at all. Like, he either needs to be the first or second player drafted in your league, or like not at all. Like you're either, hey, Christian McCaffrey missed much of the last 2 years, can't stay healthy, I'm out.
But at a
Or,
certain
hang
point,
on.
But hold on, what I'm saying.
Well,
at a certain point, though, you're like, okay, I gotta draft him. Like the reward outweighs the risk, which is why you got him at 2.
That's why I got him at 2.
Yeah.
But my point is, yes, at a certain point. but that certain point isn't 5. Like, my point is if you're willing to draft him in the first round, he should be first or second because the upside is so massive as well. I mean, right, again, he had played 5 full games last season. He averaged 23.6 fantasy points per game, over 112 scrimmage yards, over 23 touches. He was over the last 3 years, on a per-game basis, he is 5.4 fantasy points better per game than every other running back in fantasy.
You know what this
like
speaks
he's not just the best.
Yeah.
He's best by a mile.
You know what this speaks to?
What's that?
Your first reminder.
Yeah.
It is a weekly game.
It's a weekly
game. And if he's
game.
on the field that week,
he
you
helps
like
you,
your chances.
He helps you win.
Yeah.
And so, but my point is that if you want to say, like, I'm risk averse, I get it. But then you ain't drafting him fit. You're drafting him like 20th. You know what I mean? Like, when you say at a certain point, I'm with you at a certain point, but like, you're not drafting him ahead of Dalvin Cook if you're worried about the injuries. Like, to me, you're either in or out on Christian McCaffrey. You either believe or you do not.
And
so
you believe.
I believe I'm at 2. And you could make an argument for him at 1. If I'm in a draft with you and CMC goes over JT, I get it. So for me, I think the upside outweighs the risk.
Right.
Every player is a risk on every play.
Sure. And listen, it's just the health because you talked about QB upgrades. Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
There's an upgrade there in Carolina, so there's a lot of reasons to like Christian McCaffrey.
There is, and Ben McAdoo, I think I have confidence in Ben McAdoo as well. Remember, the last 2 years, he has been unhealthy. But prior to that, Christian McCaffrey never missed a game, never missed a practice, never even appeared on the injury report. This is a guy that stayed healthy throughout. And by the way, Mike Ryan, our injury expert, who's been a trainer for the Jaguars for 20 years in the NFL, head trainer for the Jacksonville, he'll join us later in the show to break down CMC and other players that have some injury concerns. You're either in or you're out on CMC. I'm in.
Okay. There's 2 more running backs I want to touch on in this segment.
Okay.
The other's another guy that's been reliable, but last year not as efficient, although the touches, he's still got nobody challenging him for touches. He's still a focal point of that Tennessee offense. I'm talking about Derrick Henry. A lot of mileage, getting up there in age. Do you still believe that Derrick Henry can be, he got hurt last year, can be the Derrick Henry that won leagues the previous 2 years?
I do. By the way, Derrick Henry was winning people leagues last year. I mean, up until he got hurt, Derrick Henry was legit just winning people the leagues. He was just awesome. I hear you about the wear and tear, and we just don't know.
4.3 yards a carry is pretty low for him.
But the volume, 29.6 touches a game last year, 27 carries a game, second in red zone carries per game, third in goal line carries per game. Like, they fed the big dog, right? I mean, they fed this guy. And my expectation is that's what's going to happen once again this year.
Yeah.
The wear and tear, look, it was a tough injury, but I think the concern here on him is,
he caught
first
the ball
off,
more too last year.
He caught the ball more. The other thing on Derrick Henry is, while he's had a lot of usage recently, he hasn't been used as much. I think people forget the first couple of years he was in the NFL. He came into Tennessee. DeMarco Murray was established. There was a time in which they were using Dion Lewis, and he couldn't he couldn't get in the field for the first couple of years for whatever reason.
Late bloomer,
Right, and so the last couple of years, tremendous usage. Here's the other thing I'll say about Derrick Henry. I don't have a stat for this, but the dude's built different. He's built different than me and you.
Yeah.
He's built different than everyone.
He's an alien. Yeah.
Right. He is a genetic freak of nature.
Yeah.
And so, like, to be that big and that fast.
Yeah.
Like the comps of like, oh, at this certain age or this many carries, running backs break down. Like, that doesn't apply to Derrick Henry because nothing applies to Derrick Henry.
We haven't seen anything like that.
I've said this before. So, like, I'm not a small guy. Like, you can't really tell sitting behind the bat. I'm 6 foot, 200 pounds. Right? I'm not saying I'm a massive dude, but I'm a larger than average human being. I'm 6 foot, 200 pounds. I have stood next to Derrick Henry, and I'm Ant-Man next to him. I felt small next to him. And again, I am not a small person, and he's just a massive human being.
He's also very fun to have. It's fun to have Derrick Henry just going off for 3 touchdowns, and and just running over people, and that's your guy that you're rooting for. It goes back to draft the guys you want.
They said when he got injured last year, he's out for the season.
Yeah.
And then he came back. He's a genetic freak of nature.
One more guy with some questions. His are both on and off the field. Obviously, they're the assault situation from Las Vegas that has Alvin Kamara in the crosshairs and under the microscope of the National Football League for disciplinary purposes. Recent reports have suggested that he may not be disciplined this year, if at all, because his legal process is ongoing. So maybe in the clear from a discipline standpoint. Wear and tear is a question with Alvin Kamara. Also just doesn't have Drew Brees anymore as his quarterback. So why still high and a believer in Alvin Kamara in the first round?
I think he plays, I'm going to rephrase this. I think he will be eligible to play every game this season. You can't predict injuries.
Gotcha.
But we got Mike Florio coming up later in the show, and he'll break down this situation further. But from everything I can tell, it feels like this is getting kicked down the road, as it were. The court case keeps getting pushed back, and it doesn't feel like the NFL wants to make a ruling until
even though it can.
They can, yes, but until the legal process plays out, I think the NFL is saying we're going to let the legal process play out, and once we know, once the legal determination of the case is determined, then we will make a ruling as to whether or not we discipline him, and if we do discipline him, for how many games, etc. And so my belief is that doesn't happen until the 2023 season. So I think he's going to be eligible to play every game, and I think he's a value. Again, try not to diminish the seriousness of the allegations, right?
Well,
we're talking fantasy football, and this is purely from a fantasy football point of view. So he is going outside the top 10 of running backs because I think people are worried about the suspension possibility. But if you knew he was going to be eligible to play all 17 games, you're talking about a guy who last year was the 5th best running back in fantasy on a points per game basis, right? Averaged 22 touches a game, 3rd most in the NFL. He had the 5th most total touches. He had 9 different games with 15 or more fantasy points. That was tied for 4th most among running backs. Like, he was Alvin Kamara last year when he was healthy. He did get banged up here, but I don't have
a challenger, workhorse.
I don't have a stat for this either, but
he's built different.
He's not built different.
Well, he is though.
I know. I mean, right? He is. But this is another one. Football players are humans. Football players are humans, and Alvin Kamara knows that there's a lot of questions about him as a football player and as a human being this offseason that they weren't there before. And so I think the guy balls out this year.
Okay.
I think the guy has he's
an incredible player.
He's an incredible player. And I also think, as we think about this Saints offense, healthy Michael Thomas, he's back. Chris Olave, right? They added Chris Olave. They added Jarvis Landry. Really good offensive line.
Great defense.
All of a sudden, they can't just focus on Alvin Kamara. All of a sudden, defenses have a lot more to worry about with New Orleans than they ever have before. Whereas for many years, it was just the Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara show. So I think even if he gets slightly less touches, again, this is a guy that had the 3rd most touches per game last year. Like, instead of 22, he's getting 18 or 17.
You talked about safe. In the first round, you want sound. You want a safe investment. Can't get much safer than Alvin Kamara. Disciplinary issue notwithstanding.
Exactly. So. The other thing that's interesting about him, and then we move on, is that I think that when you're looking at running backs, talk about the insurance. One thing I always like is there a clear-cut insurance back for that running back? So, for example, Dalvin Cook goes down, hey, draft Alexander Madison, and boom, if that happens, we know exactly who's going to take his role. In New Orleans, it's Mark Ingram. And Mark Ingram still has some burst, right? Looked good last year when he gets an opportunity. All the reports out of camp is that Mark Ingram still looks good.
Could be a good value pick.
Good value pick late in your draft. My point is as opposed to some running backs when they go down, it's going to be by a committee.
Or a free-for-all in a waiver wire. And you're stuck out.
Exactly. And you're just like, I can't believe I missed out on that guy. In the case of Kamara, you can insure if there's a suspension or an injury, you can insure it with Mark Ingram.
Which goes back to your point that insurance is important. All right, Chris Sims is coming up. When we come back, we're going to dive deeper into Matthew Berry's running back rankings, all of his rankings. We are just getting started, believe me. Your head's going to explode with all the information we're about to give you. But you know what? Your team's going to blow up too, and you'll thank us later. Stick around for more of the 2022 Rotoworld Fantasy Football Draft Guide Special.
That's right. We're at the Hall of Fame, and I'm with a legend, a Hall of Famer of the fantasy world, Matthew Berry, joining NBC Sports. So happy to have you a part of the team, buddy.
Chris, it's a dream come true. I've watched this forever. To be a part of the broadcast is amazing.
Oh, look at that bromance. Oh, my God. I'm getting a little jealous, Chris. I thought you were my brother from another.
Well, I am your brother from another. Don't worry. But, it shows you that you can fight through some adversity in life. This is an Aggie, a Longhorn. Who says we can't get together?
Exactly. You know, all you need is love. There you go.
Look at us.
Look at us.
Who would have thought? Not me. All right.
Very true.
Listen, there's not a party until Chris Sims joined the set. Okay. Earlier on in the show, Matthew, we talked about some of the top-end elite running backs. You know, your Jonathan Taylors, your Christian McCaffreys, your Derrick Henrys, your Alvin Kamaras. Let's go back into your top 10 rankings. And if you don't mind, I'd like to go to the bottom of your top 10. And Aaron Jones, and let me cheat and go 2 for 1. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in particular with the Packers, minus Davante Adams. We know about the question marks at wide receiver. How much is their value now increased, not just as rushers, but also as pass catchers?
Yeah, significantly so is the answer, Michael. I think people are really panicking on this Packers offense in a way that they shouldn't be. Yes, Davante Adams is a great player. Yes, that hurts Aaron Rodgers a little bit. But if you look, we have some data on what this Packers offense under Matt LaFleur without Davante Adams looks like. And when Adams was out, Aaron Jones averaged 4.5 receptions a game, just 2.4 when Adams was in there. There's 7 games in which Davante Adams missed, and Aaron Jones was quarterback under Matt LaFleur. And in those games, Aaron Jones averaged 25.7 fantasy points per game.
Aaron Rodgers, right.
Aaron Jones did. Aaron Jones
averaged 25.
Aaron Jones.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying. Aaron Jones averaged over 25 fantasy points per game in the 7 games where there was no Davante Adams under LaFleur with Rodgers at QB.
Gotcha.
25.7 would have been the number 1 running back in fantasy last year. Now, we know that A.J. Dillon is coming on. We know they want it to be a 1A to 1B situation. But I think there is a scenario here where people can be too low on Aaron Jones and also too low on A.J. Dillon, who last year had more rushing touchdowns than Aaron Jones, who last year had 41% of his points come from receiving in PPR. So my point is that I think people see A.J. Dillon, they see the quad father, right? And they think, oh, this guy can't catch. He can catch. And that's how they're going to make up for the loss of Davante Adams. It's going to be sort of by committee. But, Chris, these guys are going to both be involved in the passing game for, again, one of, if not the best quarterback in football.
Yeah, no question. I'm with you. I don't think everybody should panic quite so much about no Davante Adams. First off, yes, it's Aaron Rodgers, right? He's going to know where to go with the right place with the ball. They still, they got some unproven commodities as far as superstars are concerned, but I think there's still going to be enough there between his talents, a good system like you're talking about, and then they'll have defined roles. I do think A.J. Dillon's going to be the, between the tackles bell cow guy. And then, like you're kind of saying, Aaron Jones is going to be the screen guy. Or, hey, he split out a receiver and maybe he motions back. Or maybe he's at running back and motions out to receiver. And I think they're going to try to get him into space. But I certainly can see them leaning on those two a little bit more this year than maybe we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah, and by the way, I think you could see both of them in the same backfield at the same time. I think they'll get creative with those guys. I know they believe in both of them. I personally have Jones at running back 9, as you saw. That's where he's going on Yahoo.
Yeah.
I have Dillon at running back 22. He's going at 25 on Yahoo. So I think both guys are values this year. I have both higher in the overall than they are on Yahoo as well. So weirdly, I think oftentimes we don't love running back by committees, but in this particular case, Michael, I actually think both guys will have value, especially at their current ADP.
And Aaron Rodgers, I believe, in 7 games without Davante Adams, 19 touchdowns and 1 pick.
Yeah.
I know I'm preaching to the choir over there when it comes to Aaron Rodgers' ability to turn water into wine, right?
Yeah, right. Too many people are making a big deal about Tyreek Hill not with Kansas City. They're going to be fine. Aaron Rodgers without Davante Adams, they're going to be fine. It's going to be a little – sometimes I think, wide receiver by committee can also be a pain in the butt for defenses where, I don't know what guy they're actually going to make the guy here in this certain, crucial situation. So I'm not really concerned about it. Again, I don't know if it'll be as pass heavy in Green Bay, maybe a little bit more of a balanced attack than we've seen the last few years.
Yeah.
And I think their defense is going to be damn good too. Exactly. So it might be a little different style of how they win games than we've seen the last 2-3 years in Green
Packers
Bay.
running backs.
Well, and that's what we're saying here, right?
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
If they go a little bit more balanced, as Chris is talking about here, again, it gets cold in Lambeau quickly, right? And so what do you want to do? You want to run the ball, especially when you have a good defense like the Packers do.
Can there be one guy I can make off that list that I like your list there, your top 10?
Let's throw the top 10 back up again. Yeah, who you like?
I like your list. I'm not trying to.
Appreciate
Number
it.
10, DeAndre Swift, right? I just look at that and go, damn, they got a good O-line. And then with Dan Campbell from the Bill Parcells School of Coaching, and we're going to smash your face and eat your kneecaps and all that stuff, I just think that has a chance to be somewhat special this year, or at least more than what people expect. And I don't think, again, as you guys know, Jared Goff is not a superstar to where I don't think they can just lean on him to say, hey, we're going to win and throw it 40 times a game with that crew there. Number 10, Swift, and number 8, Mixon, because of their improved offensive line, are guys that I kind of look to have a little bit more of a bump up than yours
Maybe
we've seen in the past.
Right.
Yeah.
We talked about this at the beginning of the show, Chris, and the other segment where we talked about the running backs and just how important it is to have a pass-catching running back and somebody that can get you points on all 3 downs here. I think people forget, because the Lions were so bad last year, how good DeAndre Swift was before he got hurt.
He was impressive.
First 11 weeks. He was a top 4 running back in both total points and points per game as well. 17 touches or more in 8 of the 10 games prior to injury. People were worried about Jamal Williams last season. That didn't come to fruition. Jamal Williams, a nice player.
Right.
But DeAndre
Great
Swift,
interview.
DeAndre Swift, a great interview, right? Like Jamal Williams, you're welcome to come on the show anytime you want. But I think people forget just how special a player DeAndre Swift is.
All right, let's go a little further down that running back rankings list and check out numbers 11 through 20, and particularly, Matthew, I want to ask you about James Conner.
Yeah.
A lot of people might predict that a touchdown regression's coming. Like, we won't score 18 touchdowns again, but they didn't have Chase Edmonds to compete with anymore.
No, he doesn't. This is the thing that I don't think people realize. I don't believe the touchdown production last year was fluky. Why? Because look at what Cliff Kingsbury has done since he's come to Arizona. Over the last 2 years, the Arizona Cardinals are top 5 in the NFL in red zone rushing attempts and goal-to-go rushing attempts. And to your point, no Chase Edmonds there. Okay, last year, only Jonathan Taylor had more carries in goal-to-go situations than James Conner. Second most rushing touchdowns in goal-to-go situations as well. Like, that is a part of their offense. That is a staple. That is what Kingsbury likes to do. In fact, he's really good around the goal line. He's a finisher. He's a better pass catcher than he gets credit for.
Definitely.
With no change, I think he had over 40 receptions last year. And so with Chase Edmonds now in Miami, Darrell Williams is a nice insurance pick, and some depth for them.
Right.
Benjamin, I know they like, but there was a reason why both guys were free agents. We always say this, right? Follow the money.
Yeah.
Chase Edmonds and James Conner were free agents this year. They let Chase go to Miami, and they made it a priority to bring back James Conner because of what he brings to this offense.
Yeah. Speaking of pass catching, so we know he's great around the goal line, but DeAndre Hopkins out, Christian Kirk gone. Maybe there's even more value beyond just the red area for James Conner in that Arizona offense.
Yeah,
right?
maybe just what we talked about with Green Bay, they might lean on him a little bit more there. I think they have a great formula that just absolutely fits James Conner's skill set. Again, you mentioned it. They like to spread the field. They put you in a bind. Even without DeAndre Hopkins, damn, they got some receivers out there that stress you out. We know they got a good tight end. Then you got to worry about, oh, man, Kyler Murray on the move, the quarterback design runs. Those are all things that help open up holes for James Conner. And then, oh, wait, we're worried about, doubling this receiver or trying to stop this. James Conner out of the backfield, phenomenal route runner. Kingsbury's got a pretty good feel for screen game down there, too, that gets him in the end zone. Yeah. And then he's a pretty big guy, too, to your point, when you get on the 2 or 3 yard line, he can run over some people and take some contact and push it in there like a bell cow that, we don't expect from him at times.
He was so good at scoring touchdowns. People don't realize James Conner was top 10 last year in receiving yards among running backs. He was 9th overall. He had 6 different games in which Chase Edmonds missed, all right? 6 different games, and in those 4, he finished as a top 10 running back. He's currently going as running back 16 on Yahoo. I have him at 12. I'm higher in the overall as well. I get it, guys, but if he regresses in touchdowns and only scores 15 instead of 18, only 14, James
relative regression. Yeah.
That is, Arizona's going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL, and it is rare to find a guy that is going to get the majority of touches on one of the best offenses in the NFL, and you have it in James Conner.
Yeah, okay. Speaking of, let's go back to the conversation about running back by committee, or rather tandems. At the risk of disrespecting Ezekiel Elliott, am I crazy for preferring Tony Pollard? Or can both things be true, where you can love both guys and not necessarily at the expense of the other one?
I don't think you should, Michael, I've known you a long time. You and I worked together at ESPN for a long, long time. I don't think you should qualify, are you crazy, with anything beyond that. Like, it doesn't, your love for Tony Pollard doesn't mean, there are many reasons why you're crazy, my friend. But what I would say to this is that I don't mind liking him better at the ADP. I do think Ezekiel Elliott is being massively underrated this year. I think people saw Tony Pollard explode last year and like, that guy's he's so explosive, and Ezekiel Elliott looks slow, and like, it's got to be the Tony Pollard show. All right, Tony Pollard isn't a guy that is, in my opinion, Chris, you can disagree with me here, but I don't think Tony Pollard is built to be a 20 carry a game guy. Okay, Ezekiel Elliott, it's also, again, follow the money. Jerry Jones is going to play Ezekiel Elliott $12 million or something this year, right? After this year, he's out of the guaranteed money. But get this, last year, Ezekiel Elliott, okay? Last year, Ezekiel Elliott partially tore his PCL in week 5. In week 4. But the first 4 weeks of last season, Ezekiel Elliott was the 6th best running back in total points. He had 4 touchdowns. He averaged 99 yards a game. He's super durable. Yeah. I don't think people understand how hurt he was last year. It's going to be a better offensive line. Again, as we sort of talked about with the Packers running backs, look at the Cowboys. They lost Amari Cooper. They lost Cedric Wilson.
That's why I like Pollard.
Which I like. I think it's similar to the Packers situation. I think you can like both guys, especially at their current ADP. So I think you're crazy, but not about Pollard. What I was saying is that I just think that Zeke is going way too late. He's going to get 16 touches a game, if not more. He's going to get all the early down and the goal line red zone work. He's still going to be the guy around the goal line, right? And it's on one of the most efficient and best offenses in the NFL. Like, and he's healthy. Again, he tore his PCL, and the guy still managed to get out there, but that's why he looks slow and he limped.
He's not getting younger.
He's not getting younger.
Right, so he's beat up. I'm going in, you're crazy, and I'm agreeing with you.
Okay,
you're saying,
fair enough. What do you got?
Well, listen, I wonder if the Cowboys are going to cut off their nose to spite their face here with this, just because we paid them and we got to justify this contract. I'm more along with you here, Michael, and just the fact that, again, I don't know what they're going to do, and it does seem like they're going to favor Ezekiel Elliott because of the contract, and they picked him in the top 5 and everything there. But, man, does he leave a lot of meat on the bones when I watch film and watch him. And that's what does bother me. I was one that last year, if you go back and anything I saw, I was always going, I don't understand it. I understand Pollard's not as big and as physical maybe as Ezekiel Elliott, but there's other running backs in the league that are smaller than Tony Pollard that are still getting the ball a good amount. And this is one that I just wonder if the Cowboys are going to be stubborn here. I do prefer Tony Pollard, but I understand your logic all the way.
Yeah, I mean, look, fantasy is all about talent and opportunity. I believe Zeke is going to get that opportunity. Even if he's not the most efficient game, even a player, even if the yards per carry has gone down, he's still going to get volume. Again, I don't believe he's going to be he's had at least 16 touches a game every year of his career. Tony Pollard last year had 130 rushing attempts.
Right.
2 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing, Chris, and you're somebody who played in the pros for 7 years, so I think you can speak to this. This is something
8 years.
that 8 years.
Don't
Sorry,
throw out that year for me.
Sorry, 7 good years.
I earned that year.
Yeah, fair. No, I'm messing with you. All right, right. So you're So you can talk about this, I think, significantly so, right? And this is something that I think gets lost in fantasy analysis all the time. Football teams, like every other business in America, there are internal politics, okay? And it's like in the locker room. Not all the best players don't always play, right? It's something about it's about who's the guy. I just don't see if Ezekiel Elliott is healthy,
right?
That locker room, Mike McCarthy, because Jerry Jones is all about that team, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that team all runs through. I don't see Jerry coming down and saying, Zeke, you carry Tony's lunch. You know what I mean? Hey, you carry the clipboard and let Tony. Even if he's more efficient,
I don't know if I see it either. You're right. I agree with you there.
Right? Yeah. It is politics, and he's Jerry's guy. He paid him a ton of money, and to your point, cut off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah.
Like Jerry's not going to say I made a $12 million mistake or a $90 million mistake for the overall deal. And I also would argue that part of the reason why Pollard was so explosive last year is because they used him in the right spots.
Right.
Like if he was the every down guy.
Sure.
But yes, you were right. I think they use him more in the passing game because of the lack of other weapons they have beyond CeeDee Lamb.
And Dalton Schultz for that
and,
matter. No, but listen, you talked about the contract. Maybe it's a paid in full situation and everybody eats B. Let's go to some ambiguous backfields. Back to the aforementioned Chase Edmonds. In Miami, you feeling Chase Edmonds or Raheem Mostert more?
Honestly, both.
I know, right?
Look, Mostert needs to stay healthy. But what I will tell you is that I'm very excited about what Mike McDaniel is going to bring to this offense. Mostert and Edmonds are both great pass catchers, and you've got guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle who can also go into the backfield. You're going to see a lot of sweeps and motions and pre-snap motion in this offense.
Agreed.
It's going to be a lot of great stuff. Edmonds, I have Edmonds higher in the overall, and Mostert higher in the overall. I have both guys higher. Again, I think it's going to be a much better offense. Both Edmonds and Mostert are, again, pretty good pass catchers. Edmonds, what I will tell you about Edmonds is that on a points per touch basis, since he's come in the league, he's top 10 in the NFL in terms of fantasy points per touch.
Yeah.
When Chase Edmonds gets an opportunity,
he
produces.
Good. I hear you.
And I said this a million times this show. I'm going to say it again. Follow the money. When free agency opened, what did the Dolphins do? They went out and spent a lot of money on Chase Edmonds. They also signed Raheem Mostert, reuniting him with Mike McDaniel. Raheem must start. We always used to call him in fantasy. He's an explosive guy too, Chris.
Very.
I actually think both guys, especially given their current ADP, are going to provide value this year. You don't need to speak to the ADP piece of it, Chris, but just in terms of how they fit into what McDaniel wants to do.
I think you're spot on here. I mean, it's McDaniel's from Kyle Shanahan. We've seen Shanahan. It's kind of running back by committee a little bit that way. And Mostert, one of the most explosive running backs in the game. And certainly they're going to pose some problems to you when you go, whoa, Tyreek Hill, Gesicki, Waddle. Oh, no, we got to worry about this, this, and this. And then you add in the creative game design play by McDaniel. Mostert can be the home run hitter for sure, but I do worry about his health. That's the biggest thing. It's year 8. He's an NFL running back that is not real big. And I think if you made me choose either one, I'd probably go with Chase Edmonds just because he's younger and he's a little bit more well-rounded, even though Mostert's the guy that can go 80 yards to the house and strike up the band that way. And there's value there, but yes, he, I guess, scares me just a hair more.
Yeah, no, listen, I have him at, here's what I would say about most, I have it running back, I'm at overall 95. Right? He's going at 144 on Yahoo. So I think Mostert can be, they're sleeping on him, but I mean, I have Edmonds higher too. I have Edmonds at 87 overall. He's going at 92 on Yahoo. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. If you're choosing between the two, Edmonds, but I think both guys have value this year.
A lot of questions about the receivers in Kansas City. Running backs, the same thing. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has not consistently lived up to being that first-round picks. They brought in Ronald Jones, another guy who, for the most part, has been disappointing in his career in Tampa. But one of the stars of camp on offense, Isaiah Pacheco out of Rutgers, has been lighting it up. Which way you leaning in Kansas City if you got to pick one of those guys?
How about none? Because I think it's going to be what Andy Reid proved last year, what the Chiefs proved last year. They don't need to run. Almost every other team in the NFL needs to run, but when you have Patrick Mahomes, you can throw it 40 times a game and win consistently. My expectation here is that I don't think Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes away, but I do think, as you saw last year, it was CEH, it was Darrell Williams, there was Jerick McKinnon, and by the way, he's back.
That's who I love.
Derek Gore last year.
Right. So it just feels like I think it's going to be a bit of a running back by committee. It's still going to be a pass-first team. I think Pacheco's is a flyer, but he's getting so much hype now, and he's rising up draft boards, and you're just sort of like, I mean, again, remember the lessons of Darwin Thompson. Again, I'm not saying they're built very differently. Pacheco has some underlying metrics that Thompson never had. But everyone was talking about Darwin Thompson at a Chiefs camp 3 years ago, and then he did absolutely nothing. Andy Reid traditionally has been sort of a veteran guy. Even in Clyde Edwards-Helaire rookie year, they spent a first-round pick on him, and he couldn't get the full-time workload. So to me, this feels more like
staying away from it.
Yeah, I don't mind a late-round flyer on Pacheco or Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah, McKinnon would be the one I would favor.
Yeah,
because of his playoff performance.
Well, the playoff performance. I think he fits really within what you're talking about. He's to me, out of the whole group, the best pass catcher too. So, and he's got a little bit more power and explosiveness than I think he's gotten credit for, just because had those years of injury with San Francisco there. But man, he has caught my eye a little bit, really. The last 2 years a little bit, to where I just go, I think he's got a little niche here. And yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been a little bit disappointing. Ronald Jones, I think, is going to be more of maybe, hey, I form, run between the tackle kind of guy. And that's where I think, they're still going to throw it 40 times a game, and McKinnon can be the guy.
I don't mind at the end of your draft if you want to throw a dart on one of these guys, but I would not want to go into a season counting on anything from any of the Kansas City running backs because
Yeah,
I
I
do
hear
think
you
it's
there.
going to be a running back by committee, and you're going to be guessing week to week who's going to get the goal line carries.
That's a great segue into San Francisco.
Yeah.
If you want to play shenanigans, Elijah Mitchell, who, talk about, follow the money or follow the draft pick.
Yeah.
We all were enamored with Trey Sermon going into the season last year. Elijah Mitchell ends up being the guy, although he wasn't healthy all year. Now you got another third-round pick in Tyrion Davis-Price from LSU. If you want to drive yourself crazy, pick a 49ers running back. So you're going with the guy from last year, or you're going with the new blood?
No, I like Elijah Mitchell. I think he proved himself last year. It's still one of the best offensive lines in football. And the other thing, Michael, we've done studies on this. Traditionally, running backs with running backs on teams that have mobile quarterbacks tend to do better because you got to keep a linebacker in to spy on the quarterback, and so this offense is going to look a lot different under Trey Lance than it did under Jimmy Garoppolo. And so, again, just some sweep. We're worried about Trey Lance, and then you're doing some sweeps behind Trent Williams with Elijah Mitchell. I do think, especially when you consider Elijah Mitchell's. I'm at running back 21, which is about where he's going on Yahoo. So I think he's a low-end RB2. Is there some risk involved? Sure, but he's in that sort of running back dead zone, which we're going to talk about later in the show. I do think there's some upside there with a Mitchell. I don't really trust the rookies yet, again, because we saw what happened with Trey Sermon. I don't think Mitchell did anything wrong last year.
No,
other than
Jeff Wilson. Don't sleep on him.
Yes, that's a great call.
Jeff Wilson was the guy
Very
that
popular
he was.
stash
Well,
last year.
he was the guy, and then got banged up, and
Yeah.
Elijah Mitchell kind of took over.
Yeah.
And Wilson kind of fits that, Raheem Mostert mold of being the home run hitter. And I do know my buddy Kyle Shanahan a little bit. He loves the psycho fast guy who can just put his foot in the ground, and there's my hole in the zone scheme, and I'm just going to go gadget, legs. And that's where I think he could come into play. But it's hard with Shanahan in that offense because of all the reasons you stated already.
And that's why we have Mitchell, as a low-end RB2 is because they use multiple backs because of Wilson, because there's a chance that Trey Lance vultures a handful of touchdowns through the course of the season.
Yeah, that's
right. You asked me to pick a 49ers running back. It's Elijah Mitchell. I 100% agree with you, though. If you're looking for insurance, given the injury concerns of Mitchell last year, it would be Jeff Wilson Jr. Of course, he also was banged up last year.
Right.
But, so, that's one of the reasons why I think they have so much depth at the position, the 49ers do, because they've dealt with it over the years.
Yeah.
They call this the dead zone, but let me tell you something. This is where I live. Matthew Berry could attest
This is true.
to the fact that I have been a zero running back guy since before they started calling it zero running back.
Yeah.
This is how you win leagues multiple times over, is you wait until the middle and late rounds and you get the guys that other people are sleeping on or undervaluing. Because running back, man, it just gets it's too volatile. It's just too volatile for me.
I would love to disagree with you, but the truth of the matter is I've been in many leagues with Michael, and Michael is massively a weight on running back guy. He is a zero RB truther.
Denny Carter's my guy.
He is a disciple.
We here.
Of Denny Carter.
We here.
Our Rotoworld fantasy football expert.
No, I ain't no disciple. Okay, let's get it right. I've been preaching this guy. I am your John the Baptist. Okay.
I didn't know that till just now, and I'm thrilled.
I'm thrilled to have you here. So, who are some zero running back guys that you are especially high on?
Mike, before we start there,
we should explain that.
We
right?
should explain it because
not everybody
everyone
calls
knows,
it zero running back. You're right.
Not
This is
everyone
inside
follows
baseball.
Denny on Twitter. They should.
This is inside
and make
baseball.
sure you get Denny's actual Twitter account, not the 8 billion parody accounts that exist about Denny's account. But so Denny, for those that are unfamiliar, because zero RB gets thrown around a lot, and I think there's actually a lot of misinformation about what it actually is. So why don't you talk about, at least for the purposes of our show, what we're defining zero RB as in terms of a strategy this year?
There's a lot of confusion around what zero RB is. Like you said, Matthew, sometimes I'll post a roster that I've drafted with a bunch of running backs, and someone will say, wait, I thought this was zero RB. I thought that literally zero RBs are supposed to be on your roster. It's not quite it. So generally what we're doing is we're hammering elite receivers and tight ends early, and then we're waiting until the middle or the later rounds, most likely the later rounds, to get guys who could find their way to volume, whether it's through the passing game or the early down roll or both, ideally. And that's the idea around zero RB, is kind of building a roster that takes advantage, that gets better with the chaos of the NFL season. We can't predict what will happen during the NFL season. Unfortunately, we're still working on that algorithm, but with that chaos, you can fall into running backs who suddenly are seeing 20 touches a game, who are sitting on your bench. You have a built-in starter. That's the idea behind the zero RB strategy.
It's also, it speaks to what we talked about at the top of the show. It is a weekly game. And so this is where your waiver wire comes in. This is where your foul budget comes in. It's like if you can go week to week almost at running back, guys will end up emerging, and you got a shot at getting.
Well, it's the most volatile position in the NFL. Obviously, it's the one where there's the most injuries, and so there's the most opportunities for guys to emerge. We talked about this. At this time last year, Devontae Freeman didn't have a job.
Yeah,
he was sitting on his couch, and there was about a month there where he was a top 15 fantasy running back because the Ravens, obviously lost Dobbins and Gus Edwards in the preseason. And so I think that's what Denny's talking about. That's what we're talking about here, is that there are fantasy relevant players that, quote, come into the league, and they are often at the running back position because there's so much injury and turnover at the position.
Injury, turnover, and so many committees. I think, 3 guys played 75% of snaps or something like that last year. It's just the bell cow workhorse running back is, for the most part, a thing of the past. Najee Harris's and Jonathan Taylor's are few and far between. Speaking of which, I was a big Ramondre Stevenson guy last year, Denny, after the training camp that he had, and then he fumbled, and he was worthless at the beginning of the season before coming on late in the season.
He was a healthy scratch for J.J. Taylor one week.
It was really frustrating. But now he's playing the James White position in training camp. So are you high on Ramondre Stevenson as a potential quote-unquote zero running back target?
Well, we had a sound the alarm situation on Tuesday morning when Bill Belichick said, or he complimented not only Stevenson's pass catching ability, but most importantly, his pass protection improvements over the offseason. This is the thing that got Stevenson into the doghouse, into the Belichick doghouse last year. He was deactivated for several games after, I believe, he missed one block on a blitzer. But that's all it takes sometimes for a rookie. We know that. We've seen that before. But improvements as a pass catcher and a pass blocker, that's big. It's almost hard to overemphasize how big that is for his potential role in this New England offense. And as you guys know, this Patriots offense is going to look a lot different than it did last year. They've really simplified things with, curiously, Joe Judge and Matt Patricia heading up the offense. But it's going to look more like a Shanahan-type offense more than the straight-ahead running style, no frills sort of Josh McDaniels running attack. I think Ramondre Stevenson fits better into that current scheme than Damian Harris. Now, Damian Harris is not going away, and especially as a goal line back. He scored, I think, 15 or 16 touchdowns last year. He was one of the most effective short yardage backs. But Stevenson has the every down upside if Harris misses any time, as both a pass catcher and the primary guy on early downs. So if you're fading running backs early in drafts, I think Stevenson becomes a must draft guy. In fact, he's going in like 9th, 10th, 11th round, somewhere in there, depending on your league. I'm reaching for him. I have to make sure that I get him because his upside is so great.
I ranked him actually ahead of Damian Harris. There were 5 different games last year in which Ramondre Stevenson got 12 or more touches. He averaged over 15 fantasy points per game. He's proven he can do that every down roll. There's some rumors that they were shopping Harris a little bit in the offseason. So I'm with you, Denny. Love Ramondre Stevenson's upside, and the fact that he'll get some passing down work means he'll have value in weeks even which Harris is active, and certainly massive upside if he were to, if anything were to happen to Harris. Give me some other guys that are on your zero RB target list if you're employing this strategy.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Stevenson is really just the highlight. In fact, I feel like Stevenson's an even better pick per ADP than Tony Pollard, who's also a good pick there. But I'm going to go to Michael Carter. And I know it sounds strange because the Jets just invested a second-round draft pick on Breece Hall, who is supposed to be the primary running back in that backfield. But Michael Carter is good. Like, he was very good last year, very efficient as both a rusher and a pass catcher. I have some nerdy stats for you guys if you like them here. In 2021, his 1.7 yards per route run was only behind Austin Eckler and Alvin Kamara. That's it. Those are the only 2 more efficient pass catchers.
I've heard of both those guys.
I have too.
Yeah.
I've never drafted him, but I've heard of him.
Yeah, well, they're good running backs. You don't like good running backs.
I do not, and
Yeah.
everybody
No,
knows
we
this
like
by
to
now.
win.
Yeah.
We like to
We
win.
like good
That's
running
right,
back.
Michael.
Yeah, we don't like our teams falling apart because our first round pick got hurt in week 2.
But jokes aside, before I derailed you there, Denny, your point is that Carter is very efficient in stats that other good running backs are as well. And I think it was telling in the preseason game that both Breece Hall and Michael Carter both got kind of more or less the same run. I think everyone's sort of assuming, oh, Breece Hall's going to take this job over. No. They've got a San Francisco coaching staff there. Both guys are going to be involved. One just has a much higher ADP than the other, making Carter a nice target. How about James Cook in Buffalo, Denny? What are you thinking there?
Yeah.
I like him.
I like him increasingly during during training camp, because at first I was on Devin Singletary, but it really seems like, according to beat writers, that James Cook is primed to take over that pass catching role. And I keep talking about pass catching with these running backs, but it's such an important part, especially if you're in PPR formats, but even in half PPR. What we want is guys who catch passes out of the backfield and guys who see goal line work. The between the 20s stuff is for the birds. So James Cook is taking over that role, and I think that he could be very valuable on an every week basis in PPR formats, and of course has the upside of maybe taking over some of that early down role in what should be a pass heavy Buffalo offense.
Yeah, the pass catching back in a Buffalo offense.
Music to your ears.
Music to your ears. I have him on my Scott Fishbowl team. I'm very excited about James Cook.
Hey, real quick before we let you go, in interest of efficiency, like another way to approach the zero running back strategy is like down the line guys, not necessarily the guys with huge upside, obvious upside like Ramondre Stevenson, but down the line guys where it's like a handcuff and somebody else's insurance. If there's an injury or a benching of some kind, could be a home run for you. Just throw out a couple of names of guys that are truly being slept on that could end up paying dividends if you wait till late to draft running back.
Yeah, so that's the key, drafting other people's insurance backs. We're going with Zamir White, who could get a big opportunity in Vegas. He's looked very good in preseason so far. Damian Pierce, who averaged nearly 10 yards per carry in Houston's first preseason game. According to beat writers in Houston, he should be the number 1 back in the first month of the season. That's per a Tuesday report. And even a guy like Kenny Gainwell, who was very good when the Eagles were more balanced on offense last year. I think we're going to see more passing from the Eagles. That's great for Gainwell.
Yeah, I think those are all great names. I'd add Khalil Herbert. I'd add Isaiah Spiller for the Chargers there. I'd like Rashad White in Tampa Bay, Brian Robinson with the Commanders, and of course, and actually James Robinson is being slept on as well. Like that's just some late round running back flyers as well. Zero RB, absolutely a strategy, but you need to know what you're doing if you're going to employ it.
It is the strategy, Denny. It is the
That's
strategy.
Right.
My man.
That's right.
Appreciate you, brother. Thanks,
guys.
Keep fighting that good fight. All right, we're talking wide receivers who got big QB upgrades this offseason when we come back.
I'd be concerned about stepping on the field with you if you don't feel like you've prepared to be the best player that you can be. So, I respect his opinion, and I can also respectfully disagree.
That's Cooper Kupp's comeback to Justin Jefferson, coming for Matthew's little Cooper Kupp. Matthew is Justin Jefferson, though, coming for that #1 spot.
I like the confidence in Justin Jefferson. He's not my little Justin Jefferson. He is my little Cooper Kupp.
Doesn't have the same ring to it.
No, it doesn't. I will say this, though. We've talked about this. The Vikings offense, I think people are sleeping on. They're going to explode this year, and obviously Jefferson is the #1. They're getting a massive offensive upgrade in terms of the play calling with Kevin O'Connell and Wes Phillips coming over from the Rams with Cooper Kupp. So you saw what they did with Kupp last year. I think the same thing could happen with Justin Jefferson, but Cooper Kupp not going away just so fast. Get this, we talked about this earlier, but Cooper Kupp, again, could have missed the last 3 games of last year and still finished as the #1 wide receiver in fantasy. Like, he can regress a decent amount and still be worth that #1 overall pick that we've talked about.
I want to stay with that Rams offense, but talk about Cooper Kupp's new running mate, Allen Robinson. I am super high on him. Like, I think there's enough to go around and make Allen Robinson a top 15, 12, even 10-ish range wide receiver. I mean, it needs no explanation. He's never played with anybody like Matthew Stafford or been under anybody like Sean McVay.
Now, the best quarterback of his career, and it's not close.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy that was a top 5 fantasy wide receiver, or a top 10 fantasy wide receiver in Chicago with Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles, and Chase Daniel throwing him touchdowns. And now,
and he's been killing it in camp.
He's been, I mean, absolutely. And so, Sean, the last 2 years, the Rams offense, top 5 in red zone pass attempts, top 5 in goal-to-go pass attempts. You think about Allen Robinson, who's a nice, big, 6'2" wide receiver, can go up and win contested catches and 50-50 balls. Cooper Kupp's obviously going to get a lot more defensive attention this year.
Yeah.
Every defensive coordinator that has the Rams on their schedule. As you sit there and look at Allen Robinson, look at this graphic. It's unbelievable. Touchdowns by quarterback on his career. Bortles, Trubisky, Andy Dalton. Like, only Trubisky of that list is actually even a starting quarterback in the NFL. And by the way Kenny Pickett's playing, that may not even be the case by the time we get to the season.
Sure.
I mean, so Allen Robinson hasn't even gotten touchdowns from really NFL starting caliber quarterbacks, and now he's going to a future Hall of Famer in Matthew Stafford. I think the sky's the limit for him. I think people are sleeping on him. He's going outside the top 20 on Yahoo. I have him at wide receiver 16. Get this.
That's what Robert Woods was, right?
Yeah, exactly. Get this. Last year, 11 different times, Michael, 11 different times, a non-Cooper Kupp pass catcher on the Rams had 16 or more fantasy points, which last year would have been a top 15 fantasy wide receiver.
Yeah.
And now here comes Allen Robinson with, honestly, Chris, I would say even more opportunity because OBJ not there.
Sure.
Van Jefferson a little bit banged up.
Right, yeah.
I mean, they're all of a sudden, like, they have kind of a narrow window.
Year two with Stafford in that offense.
Yeah.
Chris, I mean, you mentioned OBJ. He was going to be Super Bowl MVP before he got hurt.
Right on his way. I would be shocked. I'm with you all the way on this one. I'd be shocked if Allen Robinson doesn't tear it up. I really would. I think you hit it right. One, the guy's super talented. Not everybody knows about it because of the offenses and the quarterbacks he's been with. He can do it all. He can win on the outside like Cooper Kupp and go, hey, it's one-on-one. I can run by you. I can catch jump balls. Oh, wait, you need to put me in the slot and be a good route runner and read the defense. He's very capable of that. I think the attention on Cooper Kupp certainly helps him out. Van Jefferson, you said it, him being banged up. I mean, Allen Robinson, and then Matthew Stafford, another year in the offense. I don't know if the Rams' defense is going to be as good this year, which I could see them maybe being a few more shootouts that way. So I would really be surprised if he doesn't tear it up. And I know he's ready. Okay, he works out with my dad and my brother in Jersey a little bit.
Okay,
and they rave about Allen Robinson and what he does, and I think he's highly motivated to kind of, to your point, show the world like, hey, I'm still one of the better receivers in football.
It was a lost season for him in Chicago. Obviously, some bad blood between the franchise and Allen Robinson. So now he goes to L.A., where Sean McVay is a player's coach.
Yes.
Players love, again, think about Odell Beckham Jr., who's this, crazy talented but enigmatic guy who, really butted heads in Cleveland, and in the middle of the season goes to LA
right at home.
Immediately, production, and to your point, should have been, had he not get hurt, he's probably the Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah.
And so I think Allen Robinson, there's a reason why he's crushing the way he is. And so he's going to get fed and show everyone, no. This is what I am, right?
Yeah. I could see Cooper Kupp having a slight drop because of everything you said, and now he comes up a little bit because, again, you're the Super Bowl champ. Everybody studies you in football. That's the one thing you know. Everybody goes back and goes, well, what are they doing that made them the champs? What are the schemes they're doing? You start to steal that. Everybody that's going to play you on their schedule, they want to make their mark and beat the Super Bowl champs, so they've studied you a little bit in the offseason too. And I think that could open up the field for Allen Robinson.
Bidding him $45 million to not throw him the ball.
Right.
All right.
Exactly.
Meanwhile,
Follow the money.
In Denver, Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, now with Tim Patrick out for the season with the ACL tear. I can't resist, Matthew. You riding with him? Let's ride.
Yeah, I know, right?
You riding with the Broncos? Wide receivers.
Look, again, this is something we talked about in the very first segment, the importance of getting a quarterback upgrade, right? We saw it with Cooper Kupp last year. Again, we saw it with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, both had top 10 seasons last year when Tom Brady, goes to Tampa Bay, right? So the importance of a quarterback upgrade. So here's what's weird, is I'm sort of out on Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy this year. Obviously, massive upgrade from Teddy Bridgewater to Russell Wilson, right? Mr. Unlimited jokes aside, like Russell Wilson's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and he will improve them. But guys, if you look at what Cortland Sutton did last year, and on a points per game basis, he was wide receiver 56. Jerry Jeudy was wide receiver 60 on a points per game basis. Is Russell Wilson miles better than Teddy Bridgewater? Of course. Will this be a more fantasy-friendly, a more wide-open offense? Yes and yes and yes. But Courtland Sutton's going as wide receiver 19 on Yahoo. Jerry Jeudy's going as wide receiver 22. Do I think Russell Wilson's great? Yes. Do I think Courtland Sutton goes from wide receiver 56 to wide receiver 19? Do I think Jerry Jeudy goes from wide receiver 60 to wide receiver 20? Like, what? Yeah. You're talking a 40 wide receiver jump, and like it's so deep. Like you're putting him ahead of guys like, there's a lot of you're putting him ahead of guys like Allen Robinson there, and so again, we've seen flashes
pumping the brakes.
Yeah, just in terms of ADP. Like, don't hate the player, hate the ADP, hate where they're going in drafts, and so. Do I think Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy have nice years this year? I do, significantly improved from last year. But at their current price point, there are more proven commodities going inside the top 20 that I feel more comfortable with because we don't know what Russ is going to do. Is he? Everyone's like, oh, that's going to be DK and Lockett.
Not necessarily.
And you're like, you got KJ Hamler, you got Albert O, you've got two really good pass-catching running backs and Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, Chris. Russ could be coming in and spreading the ball around.
Does he hit the ground running in Hackett's offense?
Well, they're going to be in a new offense. That's the first thing. And I would argue here this is going to be the best offense those guys have been in, just like someone we talked about, right, with Allen Robinson. Definitely the best quarterback either one of them dealt with. I'm a little higher on Courtland Sutton than you are. I do think we got to remember last year. Yeah, Teddy Bridgewater, he's checked down Teddy, so he's not going to throw the ball deep. Courtland Sutton is a physical freak and was on the cusp of being a top 10-ish receiver in football, in my opinion, before he hurt his ACL a few years ago. Last year was his first year back from it. I think you could see a massive jump from him. And here's just one other thing that just jumps out to me. Russell Wilson is not a big-time, over-the-middle thrower of the football. He's a little smaller. He takes care of the football. He can't always see. Hey, here's a little heat map to kind of explain it that way. The blue is cold. The red is hot, as you could tell. Sutton can run by you and a jump ball type of guy where I go, Russell Wilson, as good of a deep ball thrower he is, that's where I would just say, watch out for him. I understand the trepidation. I get that. I like Jerry Jeudy, but Sutton's one guy that I got my eye on that I think could really maybe pop on the scene, at least in my opinion.
And I like Sutton more than Jeudy. I agree with you. If there's a guy on that offense that could be DK Metcalf,
it's
Sutton.
Him.
It's Sutton. Sutton is the guy. Certainly more touchdown equity. And to your point, he's had more success so far in his NFL career than Jerry Jeudy has.
These next two wide receivers are fascinating. This example of one team's trash being another team's treasure. So starting Indianapolis with Michael Pittman goes from Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan.
But by the way, you know what? We've seen, whether it's Calvin Ridley, whether it's Julio Jones, we've seen Matt Ryan support one fantasy relevant wide receiver. And so Michael Pittman, I think, is really interesting this year. He led the Colts in targets and receptions last year.
Interesting.
Wide receiver, that's too high for me. I have him lower than that. So, again, but I do think it's an upgrade I do think Wentz to Ryan is an upgrade ultimately for Michael Pittman. I think he's going to have a nice year. He's clearly a top 20 wide receiver. I think if you left your draft with Pittman as your number 2 wide receiver, I think you're in good shape here.
Right.
But I will say that I wonder if, because last year Pittman was all they had.
Right.
Chris?
Exactly right.
And this year, I know we've heard it a million times before, but Paris Campbell is healthy this year, right? Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce is really interesting. If you watch his tape from college, Alec Pierce is really interesting. People that watch me at my old place know that I am obsessed with Mo Alley Cox. Is this the year, free Mo Alley Cox?
Sure.
And obviously it's going to be a team with a good defense, and they want to run the ball with Jonathan Taylor.
Run, right? Like they did at the end of the year. Remember, it was a run the damn ball we were saying all year. I think they got to come in this year going through the run.
And we're hearing Nyheim Hines is going to be even more involved in the passing game.
I'm a Michael Pittman fan too. I'm with you though. I think it's more of a number 2 type of guy that way. He can do it all. But I guess I worry about the Paris Campbell thing. I think you went right where I was going to go. Yeah. Paris Campbell, is his superstar capabilities. He does. When I watch him on film, and I'm Johnny Film guy like that, I am amazed at his explosive ability. But health has been an issue, and I do wonder about that. I think because of him, Alec Pierce, you mentioned him as well. There's some other guys that maybe can take away some of the catches from Michael Pittman. I think the offense will be better, to your point, with Matt Ryan. I just think maybe it might be a little bit more of a spreading the wealth type of thing.
So when I was talking about trash versus treasure, I meant Carson Wentz because obviously the Colts moved on from him, but now he's an upgrade for your Washington Commanders.
It's one of those weird things because I don't want to talk down Michael before we get there. I don't want to talk down Michael Pittman because I love the talent, love the player, and I do think Ryan is an upgrade over Wentz. But last year he was wide receiver 24 on a points per game basis, and do I think Ryan over Wentz is a 12-point upgrade? You know, and because he's going as wide receiver 12 on Yahoo, which is really, really rich.
Yeah.
So,
wide receiver 1.
But overall, yes, upgrade for Michael Pittman. To your point about Carson Wentz, people are going to call me a homer. Fair enough. Whatever you think of Carson Wentz, he is a massive, and I mean massive, upgrade over all the quarterbacks that Terry McLaurin has played with.
Agreed.
Again, we talk about Allen Robinson, and you look at the list of those guys. It's a similar list, right? I mean, so God bless Taylor Heineke. Love the player, love the swagger, but there's a reason, you know, he's a backup.
Right.
Right. And by the way, Taylor Heineke was an upgrade over Dwayne Haskins, Alex Smith, Kyle Allen, which is the triumvirate that he played with the year before. You know, so McLaurin, it's been a long time since he's had like and I mean this with no disrespect, a professional quarterback. Carson Wentz is a professional NFL quarterback who can make all the throws. No, he is.
No, I'm not laughing. I'm saying he's on his third team in 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it just goes to show you, like,
well, I think it's the
team,
person more than maybe the player itself. And can you trust them? Which also, I always go, could lead to more fantasy points. Because Carson, you never know. He could throw an interception. Hey, now we're in a shootout, and we got to throw the ball a whole lot, plus his skill set to me.
It really just speaks to how bad you had it in Washington.
It's been so brutal. But, like, the questions about Carson Wentz
I forgot you're a Commanders fan.
I know. The questions about Carson Wentz are, can he be a franchise quarterback? Can he be a guy that puts a team on his back and says, we're winning this game?
But we're talking about, can he be better for Terry McLaurin?
Can he be better? Yes. Can he run the playbook and make all the throws and get the ball to Terry McLaurin, who we know this offense is going to go through again? Follow the money. What did Washington do? Washington is like, we are making sure this guy is not going anywhere. Made him a big, so he's going to be the focal point of that offense.
Samuel healthy, Jahan Dotson takes away. Like, you can't double Terry McLaurin all the time and just go, they're going to go to him every time. And that's where I'm with you there.
Right. By the way, Jahan Dotson killing it in camp. Like, that's a sleeper for you. We're going to get to our rookie wide receiver segment, but Dotson is definitely a riser as we get to our risers and followers segment. But so I'm high on Terry McLaurin as well. But I'm not. I'll tell you one guy that I'm even higher on, DJ Moore.
All you got to do is be higher in the touchdown department, and he's already there, right?
I mean, DJ Moore.
Baker Mayfield just getting the ball in the end zone.
DJ Moore is the only, I believe he is the only receiver with over 1,200 yards each of the last 2 years. Someone will get in my ear and correct me if I've got that stat wrong.
Justin Jefferson's got that.
No. I mean, I'm sorry. Since he's been in the league.
Okay.
Hang on. I'll tell you exactly.
Well, here, I'll fill in while we talk. Go ahead. But you go.
I want to make sure I get this stat right.
I love DJ Moore. It's not about DJ Moore. It's just about, can the damn quarterbacks and can they protect him and the offense deliver the ball to him. DJ Moore is, like, for my money, top 5-ish in football. You know, he's one of those guys where, if the system helps him, he's great. But even if the system doesn't work, it's like, hey, he could throw a screen to him like Deebo Samuel or speed sweep, and he breaks 7 tackles and outruns everybody. He's a special, special talent. We were at the Super Bowl this year, just for a little side note. Micah Parsons, like, who's the best player you played against this year? He goes, DJ Moore. So that just tells you the talent. So it's just, to me, the question is, the offense, the quarterback, can they deliver the ball to him consistently and make him the star that, you know, we think he is, but the public sees it?
I know there was something slightly off about my stat, and I realized it. He's the only wide receiver with over 1,200 scrimmage yards each of the last 3 seasons.
Gotcha.
So that's why Jefferson isn't there yet. Like, we know he'll finish it, but 3 seasons. But again, he's never scored more than 4 touchdowns in an NFL season. And I say the same thing I say about Carson Wentz. Exactly. The same thing I say about Carson Wentz, I say about Baker Mayfield. Like, again, like, we can debate whether Baker Mayfield can be a franchise quarterback, but he is a professional quarterback who is an upgrade over what DJ Moore has played with previously, right? Sam Darnold struggled, obviously. Cam struggled.
Bridgewater.
I mean, so DJ Moore is a special player. The touchdowns need to come up. I think they will under Baker Mayfield.
Ben McAdoo, I think, is going to be an improvement.
In terms of that offense.
Offensive line should be better. I would be surprised if he's not better too. I'm with you there.
Yeah, and I have DJ Moore all the way up at wide receiver 13.
So right on the cusp of a wide receiver 1. Yeah.
Absolutely, slightly higher than where he's going. Yahoo, and I have him significantly higher in the overall. I have him at 29 overall. Yahoo has him at 38. So love DJ Moore.
So we talked about the people who came up: Robinson in L.A., the Broncos wide receivers with Russell Wilson. Michael Pittman with Matt Ryan, Terry McLaurin with Carson Wentz, and DJ Moore with presumably Baker Mayfield. Let's talk about the people who it seems like might have taken a downgrade, taken a hit at quarterback. You referenced them earlier, the Seattle wide receivers, Metcalf and Lockett, no Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, do we need to say anything more than that? Hang on, here's like Drew Lock or Geno Smith.
Yeah.
Look.
But can you end up? You're not drafting them where you would have with a Russell Wilson. But could this be a situation, just given their talent? Could it be a situation where you end up striking gold with just a value pick with these guys, or they're still being overdrafted?
I think they're being a little bit overdrafted.
Gotcha.
I think the concern is, like, if I had to pick one, give me DK Metcalf, because at least, he's a red zone threat. I feel like there's a floor there with a touchdown.
And to your theme, they paid him.
They paid him, right? Exactly. To me, they're like, and I just think he's a special player, right? Just. Forgetting everything like that.
One of the freakiest of the freaks.
Right, exactly. He's just built different, right?
No doubt.
And so if I had Lockett's a little bit more streaky. What made Lockett so special is not only his speed, but his connection with Russell Wilson. Like, their timing was impeccable, and so I don't know that continues under Geno Smith or Drew Lock, or who knows, maybe Jimmy Garoppolo gets traded there. Ultimately, I think it's going to be a much more of a run-first offense. It's going to be an offense that isn't nearly as efficient or scores as much. Pete Carroll always wanted to run with Russ, right? Oh, remember, let Russ cook and everything like that. The problem, and he got away with it because Russell was so efficient. Like, he'd have 25 pass attempts, but he'd be 21 for 25 or something. He was just so crazy efficient. That's not going to be the case with Smith or Geno, or Locke, I should say. Oh, yeah. But the other thing that I would say is, just don't be fooled, because if you look at just pure fantasy points.
Yep.
DK Metcalf actually was good when Geno Smith filled in for Russell Wilson last year, but he scored 3 touchdowns in 4 games, and I think that's a little bit fluky. I don't know that you can count on the touchdowns.
No.
DK Metcalf's currently going as wide receiver 20.
He's a stud. He's a top 10 receiver in football, but in
fantasy,
it's a different game. And
I'm nervous.
How many weeks did we go last year where they go, it's 3 quarters in the game and they haven't thrown the ball to DK Metcalf? There's an offensive problem there, and it's a little too conservative, I think, because of the defensive coach. And, they don't know how to feed guys the right way out there. Yeah. So I got to see it to believe it before I would buy onto that, even though I love DK Metcalf, the talent, for sure.
He's more of a wide receiver 3 for me in fantasy, like a high-end wide receiver 3. I have him at 22, wide receiver 22. So, or in a 12-team league, he's, a borderline wide receiver 2. Lockett, I'm much lower on, wide receiver 39. Tyler Lockett is going to be one of those guys that have 5 games where he just absolutely blows up. You're going to have no idea when they come.
Hey, how about this?
Yeah.
See you next year when you got C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young.
There you go.
we'll talk about them next year. Listen, I'm on the clock. I'm looking for a wide receiver 2 or 3. What do I do with a name that jumps off the screen like Amari Cooper? With the Deshaun Watson uncertainty, we still don't know as of this recording how long he's going to be suspended. I mean, not to mention, that's a run-first offense with Chubb and Hunt. Joku, they paid a lot of money to at tight. It's like, what do you do with Amari Cooper?
You ignore him. You move on to somebody else.
Let somebody else take that.
Somebody else deal with it. First up, look, there's so much that's uncertain in fantasy football just to begin with, right? I mean, it's a game played with a leather ball that's an oblong shape. Like, weird stuff happens, right? Weird stuff happens. Right. And so all you're trying to do in fantasy is trying to narrow the uncertainty. What can try to put all the odds in your favor? And there's so much that's unknown about Amari Cooper, who's been banged up, who last year had the lowest target share of his career, who the Cowboys, and Jerry's in win now mode.
Yeah.
But the Cowboys made a business decision and said, like, we want to keep Gallup. Obviously, we've got CeeDee Lamb. We're going to let Amari go. If you look at the splits, Amari has not been great in cold weather.
I would just wanted to go, that's where I'm with you. That's to me where I would have questioned Cleveland, going, you look at Amari Cooper on grass and cold weather, he would scare the absolute crap out of me. I'm with you right there. That's where I was like, wait, Cleveland, you want him? Have you watched that all his good games are on turf or in Dallas when the conditions are right? I don't know. He would scare me that way. I think that's a real thing.
Right, and then we have questions about the quarterback, right?
Yeah.
First, like, is he catching nothing but Jacoby Brissett?
Yeah.
Or is it Deshaun Watson, who, by the way, looked like a guy who hadn't played football in over a year in the preseason game, right?
Before he gets
so
going.
it's going to be a while before,
Yeah.
if he gets on the field this year, it's going to be a while before he gets into a rhythm. He doesn't have that connection with Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper has dealt with health issues. Like, there's too many red flags for me in terms of where he's currently going at ADP. He's going at wide receiver 27. I'm even lower than that. So.
You're saying like wide receiver 4 almost kind of guy here.
Yeah, and when you get into that range, I don't know.
All right.
Every league I'm in, Amari Cooper is going to be on somebody else's team. That's
doubt.
what I know. That's
doubt.
what I can tell you.
All right. Well, what can you tell us when it comes to guys that have been wide receiver ones who moved on to new places? Wide receivers dominated the headlines. None bigger. Chris, I call myself, I'm the Derrick Carter, his Davante Adams at NBC Sports here. I was already here. Now I'm reuniting my man Matthew Berry. So
You're a Hall of Famer, you're saying?
It's hard to go from Hall of Fame to Hall of Fame. Right. You know what I mean? So let's start with Davante Adams. Is he still a wide receiver 1 now that he's back with his day 1 Derek Carr?
Yeah, he is. I mean, I'm at wide receiver 4. So, I mean, you knock him a little bit, right? Going from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr is a downgrade. I'm sorry, right? It just is.
But not massive.
I mean, you don't have to say sorry. We're talking about maybe the greatest talent to ever play the position, so don't worry.
Right,
you're good.
exactly. It is a downgrade. And even though they played college ball together, they're not going to have, at least initially, the same kind of connection that those two had. You also go to a Raiders team that has a lot of talent. Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, they're going to want to use the running backs as well in the passing game, and so Davante Adams is going to get his, make no mistake. But this is a guy that had an over 30% target share each of the last 3 seasons in Green Bay. He's not going to get an over 30% target share, especially not when they get in close. I think he's going to have a monster year. Again, I'm at wide receiver 4, and I don't think Josh McDaniels has ever had a wide receiver this talented since Randy Moss.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so Josh McDaniels got to be like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Raiders ownership, for getting me Davante Adams. But yes, for years, Davante Adams was the clear-cut number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. I'm at 4 this year.
Brandon Marshall comes to mind.
Well, that's
although that didn't go great.
I was there.
Yeah,
I was there.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to speak to a little bit because I'm agreed. Waller's going to. They love Waller.
Yep.
I mean, the Raiders used phrases when I was out there, like we heard John Gruden talk about Waller. Maybe the greatest specimen I've ever seen. So, like, they obviously think a lot of them, and then that's the Gronk aspect of the offense, right?
They got their Renfrow.
You say follow the money, they're going to make it work, and they got Renfrow the slot.
Yeah.
And the offense with the McDaniels and route running and precision and all that does to fit Davante Adams to where, I don't know if it's going to be 140 receptions and all that, but he's going to get the ball, to your point, Matthew Berry. They're going to feed him big time.
Do not tell Tyreek Hill that he downgraded Matthew.
Well, he did. I can just tell you that.
It's super weird because it's almost like, have you not watched football? Like, I get being a good teammate.
Yeah.
I get supporting your guy. But come on. what do we do? Like, yes, I mean, Mahomes to Tua at this point of their respective careers is a massive downgrade. Yeah. Now, they are going to – Mike McDaniels, I think, is as creative an offensive mind as there is in football. They will manufacture touches for Tyreek. They will use him in certain ways in high leverage situations. He's going to get a massive target share. And, and here's the thing. Tyreek Hill can have a 70-yard touchdown because Mahomes can flick it 70 yards, or he can throw a 5-yard bubble screen and Tyreek can outrun everyone for 65 yards, right? And it looks the same in the box score for us in fantasy. But Mahomes to Tua is a downgrade. So here's a guy that normally would be one of the first 2 or 3 wide receivers off the board. For me, I'm at wide receiver 8. I have him 20th overall, but that is higher than he's going on Yahoo. ADP of 26, wide receiver 9 overall. Again, he has the second most, since 2017, he has the most receiving yards in the NFL by a fairly large margin.
I think both of y'all are still high. Chris, that was scared of living daylights out of me to draft Tyreek Hill.
I hear you. I think it's not going to look the same. I think that's what I'll agree with Matthew here. It's going to be manufactured. It's going to be speed sweeps, reverse. Fake the speed sweep to Jalen Waddle, fake the play action run. Bootleg. There's Tyreek Hill in the flat, and we got him in space, and he's going to have to make more plays with maybe 5-yard receptions, and then get yak after it. I think that's the big thing. Don't expect like, oh, it's going to be deep posts and, hey, you just line up here and Mahomes and, Tyreek, you just run way over there and Mahomes will scramble around and throw the ball down the field. That's not going to happen. I don't think you'll see as many explosive plays.
Sure.
Still think you see a lot of catches. But two, we talked a little bit about the running backs, the Dolphins running backs. They're going to run the ball. They're going to do that. Gasecki's good.
He may not
Waddle's
be the most productive receiver on his team this year.
Maybe
Maybe
Waddle.
Waddle.
Weapons there. They got a really talented team there, so that could hurt him.
He's built very differently, but if you think about what McDaniel did last year with Deebo Samuel, I think that's a good model. Again, they're different. They're built differently.
He may not run between the tackles,
right?
but he'll
Exactly.
be
But
creative.
But I bet you Tyreek Hill gets carries as a running back this year. Again, I agree. Not off tackle stuff, but it'll be sweeps and
reverses,
exactly.
toss, whatever. Yeah. Yes,
they're gonna use him a lot of ways. Again, follow the money.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill wanted out of Kansas City, and he could have gone a lot of different places. Yeah. And I'm sure that the reason he chose Miami is because they talked to him. They said, no, we're gonna get you the ball.
One of the reasons.
Well,
he chose
Miami.
Miami.
And he likes Miami.
Listen, I make no mistake. Miami's a lot more fun than some of the other cities in the NFL, and he got paid. But
no doubt.
he was going to get paid wherever he went.
Right, and he's going to get the ball. They're going to feed him.
Yeah.
I know how high you are on Jalen Hurts. By extension, are you equally as high on his new best friend, or his old best friend and now best friend again at wide receiver, A.J. Brown?
I am. Because I don't have a great stat for it. Look, we know A.J. Brown's great, right? But so last year, the two most run-heavy teams in the NFL were the Philadelphia Eagles and the Tennessee Titans. My expectation here is that in the second year under Nick Sirianni, third year for Jalen Hurts in the league, they open it up a little bit more.
Okay.
Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown are very close friends personally off the field and have been for a while. It's been well reported and documented. So I believe he is going to help Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts is going to get him the ball. A.J. Brown needs to stay healthy. But, you talk about yak, right? I mean, so he's a great example of that. I'm a huge fan of A.J. Brown. Look, I'm at wide receiver 12, 28th overall, slightly higher than where he's going on Yahoo, where he's going at 32 overall. This is a guy who, on a points per game basis, didn't have a great year last year, but I think can be someone special that we've seen prior to last year. Kind of a lost season for him last year with the injuries.
He's a freak show. I mean, he's one of the physically most gifted receivers in football, no doubt. I have my questions about Jalen Hurts if they can't run the ball.
Yeah.
That's my only thing. There's a lot to like about Jalen Hurts, but I also sit there and go, man, things could be somewhat easy with one-on-one matchups and stuff because of the way they run it. It's one of the best offensive lines in football, if not the best. And then Devontae Smith on the other side. Goddard, pretty damn good tight end, working the middle of the field. So, and then this is the one thing I'll say with Jalen Hurts, too, that I really do like about his throwing. He's a good deep ball thrower. He will. He sees one-on-one matchups. He can push it out there or at least put it in a spot where, hey, just go up and make a play. And we know that receivers are much better at making those plays than DBs are. It's one that I'm a little torn between that one, just because of all the factors I just mentioned. But I love A.J. Brown. The Eagles, to me, are one of the teams to watch out for in all of football. I just don't know if they'll be the high-octane passing attack that maybe we see with some of these other receivers we've talked about.
All right, let's get into some sleeper wide receivers. Those are the big-name guys. And I don't know what qualifies as a sleeper nowadays. Everybody's reading you and listening to you. Right. Everybody knows everything, but who's still being undervalued and underdrafted?
That's the correct thing. There is no such thing as a sleeper or bust. It's really like, what does it cost to acquire that player's services in a draft or a salary cap league? And for me, some guys that are going underrated. We've talked about some of them, but I'll start with Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, right? I mean, so. I think Marquise Brown going over, reuniting with Kyler Murray in Arizona. DeAndre Hopkins is not there. Hopkins going to miss the first six game, right? Christian Kirk is no longer there. Does A.J. Green still have one more season in the tank for him? They're going to try to manufacture some touches for Rondale Moore, but Marquise Brown's a really good wide receiver, and that's going to be a very productive offense. And so I don't think people are really talking about Hollywood Brown.
I'm with you there. They're going to ride him, and you're right. And the kid from Purdue from last year,
Rondale Moore.
Rondale Moore. I think so early on for sure.
Who else people sleeping on?
Yeah, I think Robert Woods is going too low. Robert Woods is really good.
Yeah.
Robert Woods, and everyone's like all about Treylon Burks, and we'll see what happens with Burks. But Robert Woods is really good. And again, we've seen it with A.J. Brown that Ryan Tannehill in that offense can support at least one very fantasy relevant wide receiver.
Yeah.
Robert Woods has been a top 20 fantasy wide receiver every year of his career since he went to L.A. I think Woods is being slept on. Way too low.
Agreed there, too. He can work the system. He's a great route runner. He's the guy. Burks is raw. I think they're not going to be able to depend on him. He's more get the ball in his hands.
Right.
Woods can really, I think, put his presence in the passing game with Tannehill.
How is it possible to sleep on a dude that scored 4 touchdowns in a divisional playoff game?
I know, but Gabriel Davis, a lot of people think he's being overhyped. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people think Gabriel Davis is being overhyped. I don't think that's the case. Okay, get this. So with Gabriel Davis, I want to just give you this stat, which I think it's insane. Last year, Gabriel Davis was 98th in the NFL in targets. Right, there are almost 100 players that got more targets than Gabe Davis did last year. 11 different games, he ran less than 20 routes. I mean, they're not even using this guy, and yet he still was top 5 in the NFL among wide receivers in end zone targets. Guy's barely on the field, and yet still, when he was on the field, Josh Allen is looking for him. Now there's no Emmanuel Sanders. There's no Cole Beasley.
Yeah.
There are, I believe, almost 150 targets, over 150 targets available now with those two guys gone. Yeah. Yes, we expect a bigger role for Isaiah McKenzie, and they brought in Jamison Crowder, but make no mistake, Gabriel Davis is going to be the number 2 wide receiver in a pass-heavy, pass-first offense with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
Give me any piece of Josh Allen I can find.
Give me any piece of Josh Allen. It's one of the things we talked about at the top of the show, Michael, is that targeting quarterbacks matter and offenses matter.
Yeah.
Gabriel Davis has a great offense around him and a great quarterback there. All in on Gabe Davis this year.
That's his situation. You like his skill set?
Well, I do. I like his skill set, and I think the situation makes sense, too, for him to at least have more of a presence on the field. I think the big thing is, he might not blow us away with stats. Last year it was around 550 or so, somewhere around there. I don't know if he's, going to be a 1,000-yard receiver, but I think it could be, 800 yards with a whole bunch of touchdowns because
he'll win you some weeks.
He's the only size guy they got.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be attention to Diggs, but back shoulders, jump balls. That's where Gabe Davis is really, I think, going to make a name for himself. I will say this: I'm Buffalo under the radar. I want to see the new offense and no Dayball. I think people are kind of just going, they'll be good because they got Josh Allen. Dayball's really damn good offensive mind.
Right.
Ken Dorsey taking over. And I'd like to see a little bit there first, so that just scares me a little bit.
You'll see him win some weeks for you, like the right matchups against the number 2 corner opposite Stephon Diggs. You'll be happy to have Gabe Davis in your lineup.
Yeah, he's only 23. I mean, I know from talking with people in Buffalo, and this is last year, they think they found something in him. They were telling me, we think we found something special in this guy.
Hey, let's speed this up a little bit. I mean,
rapid fire.
Every year people sleeping on Brandon Cooks. So is he still sleeping? It's just
100% because he's not sexy, but he's 1,000 yards each of the last 2 seasons. Massive target share from Davis Mills. We know it's going to be a bad team. They're going to be throwing a lot. Again, I'm higher on Cooks than the consensus are. Yeah. I'm at wide receiver 18. He's going as wide receiver 25. Just a professional wide receiver who's in a great spot.
Yeah, can do it all. Route runner, can take off the top of the defense, can make plays. And I think the biggest thing is that they don't have many other options that are really that sexy, so give him the ball.
And if you look at his numbers with Davis Mills last year, really impressive.
Why is the market lower on Rashad Bateman than you are when he's the obvious number 1 target, or number 1 wide receiver target, I should say, in Baltimore?
Yeah, I don't get that. Again, talent and opportunity. There's a reason why they let Marquise Brown go is because of the belief they have in Rashad Bateman, almost 150 targets available there, right? There's a 24% target share for Marquise Brown that is now out the door. And that passing offense, it's going to be Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews. They did nothing in free agency of the draft. There's no other players there where you're like, well, that's a guy that's going to be a competition. Bateman's super talented. When he started slow last year because he wasn't healthy. Yeah. And I know they're going to be more run heavy, but they're still going to throw the ball somewhat.
Right.
It's Lamar's contract year. Right. Lamar wants to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
And you don't become the highest paid quarterback in the NFL by handing off all the time.
Chris, I was listening to Unbuttoned earlier. You're not that crazy about Rashad Bateman. Or at least you had questions coming out of Minnesota.
I did. I necessarily didn't find him the most explosive. I thought he was a little overrated coming out. But I don't know when it comes to this aspect of it. he's the go-to guy at receiver, like to your point. And then, hey, they got some good tight ends. And then let's just not forget, Lamar Jackson's ability to throw the ball is grossly underrated. I'm kind of sick of hearing people talk about it. I really am. I mean, damn. I mean, how many times has he got to bring you to the playoffs and make great plays and great throws in the clutch? So, and then you add on, like you talked about, the running game. It's hard to double receivers in Baltimore because you got to worry about so many other things at the line of scrimmage. Dominant offensive line. Lamar might keep it off the edge. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, holy hell. Mark Andrews down the middle, and I think that's where he'll find a niche and be the go-to guy.
Hey, Matthew, I'm not a Bears fan, so I can say this. I don't want to watch the Bears, but I'll watch Darnell Mooney pile up fantasy points.
There you go. Yeah, you don't have to watch the games. Just enjoy the fantasy points on Monday morning, right?
Yeah.
Final 4 weeks of the season last year, Darnell Mooney was a top 11 fantasy wide receiver. Once Justin Fields sort of like got used to the NFL, whatever you think of Justin Fields, you have to understand that was such an awful, horrific situation from top to bottom that he was thrown into last year. Again, we talk about opportunity and talent. We all think Darnell Mooney is talented. We watch the tape, right? And now here goes Allen Robinson. He's leaving. Jimmy Graham. Like, there's a lot of targets suddenly available. He's clearly the number 1 wide receiver on a team that is going to throw this year. And so, yeah, I'm in on Darnell Mooney, as I think a lot of people are, but I think he takes the next step this year.
Can Fields take the next step to getting the ball?
I do. I think Fields will take the next step. There's so many other things in Chicago that scare me. I kind of agree on all points with Mooney. One-on-one's a matchup. But my thing is, like, are the Bears going to be able to run the ball good enough to get him one-on-one? Is there going to be somebody else that's going to jump on the scene that's going to take away coverage from him that way? The Bears, have not necessarily done Justin Fields a whole lot of favors by surrounding him by top-end talent.
Darnell Mooney's going as wide receiver 33 on Yahoo. I'm at wide receiver 20. He's a starting wide receiver. He's the number 1 wide receiver on an offense that isn't going to be horrific. I mean, right, again, like, you think you're pro quarterback, like, you think Justin Fields can take that next step. Like, I'm a believer in Darnell Mooney. Again, he proved it last year. Top 11 fantasy quarterback over the final, a wide receiver over the final 4 games. Wide receiver 33. What are we doing, people?
A lot of people thought Elijah Moore was going to go off last year. He showed flashes. You think he could take the next step this year in New York with Zach Wilson?
I do. We avoided a scare there with Zach Wilson. Looks like he's only going to miss a little bit of time. And by the way, Joe Flacco, he's a professional NFL quarterback. Like, Joe Flacco will be able to get the ball to Elijah Moore. I just think Elijah Moore, you saw flashes of it last year. I just think he's a special kid. Yeah. And so, and I will say this about I have all these friends that are Jets fans, and I'm like, if I'm a Jets fan, I'm feeling optimistic. Joe Douglas has done a great job. They've crushed the draft each of the last 2 years.
Agreed.
They have a direction for that franchise. They've made smart moves in free agency. Their offensive line's going to get better. Yeah. We'll wait to see if Zach Wilson can be the guy. That's the big question mark. Yeah. But they're going to protect him better. And adding Wilson, they've got Corey Davis there. It's not going to be all about Elijah Moore, but I think he's a special player. And Elijah Moore is currently going as wide receiver 36.
Right.
And so I am higher than that.
You loved him coming out of Ole Miss.
I do. I love him coming out of Ole Miss. I mean, I love Zach Wilson. I almost shed a tear the other night when he got hurt. I really did. I believe in him. But I think, to your point, they got a little everything going on there. Yeah. They got 2 good running backs. The O-line's been fixed. Uzoma at tight end. Garrett Wilson, the number 10 pick from Ohio State. Corey Davis, you mentioned. The only thing I actually worry about a little bit is just the talent on the team kind of taken away from maybe just overall unbelievable production. Yeah. So, but I think he's going to be the guy that really works the middle of the field for them and does, rack up a good amount of catches. But, yeah, that hurt me when Zach Wilson got hurt.
Last thing to wrap up this segment, Matthew. So, obviously, we see a lot of rookie receivers go in the first round every year. We've been spoiled in recent years by rookie receivers, specifically ones coming out of LSU. Which rookie receivers jump out to you at both ends of the spectrum, either guys that can go off or guys that just scare you that people are way too high on?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is I would want to count on any rookie wide receiver, right? I mean, we talked about this also at the top of the show. People see Jamar Chase last year, Justin Jefferson 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's unusual.
That's unusual.
Right.
Having said that, you think about Amon-Ra St. Brown at the end of last year or Jalen Waddle at the end of last year. Rookies over the second half of the year can be productive. And so some of the guys on this screen that I think are really interesting, Drake London, he's going to be the number 1 in Atlanta. He's really interesting. George Pickens, his value is rising. We've seen what he's done in the preseason. They're really excited about him in Pittsburgh. And it's always one of those things, when the Steelers draft a wide receiver, you pay attention.
No doubt.
Right. And so Pickens, there was never a question about the talent. It was some off the field stuff, but seems like that's been figured out. Olave in New Orleans, I know Peter King was really impressed when he was down there. Jalen Tolbert, I'm really excited about as we talk about opportunity. Gallup banged up, James Washington banged up.
They like to throw the ball.
So I'm really excited about Tolbert. Dubs, we talked about with Peter King. Jahan Dotson, I have a lot of, Washington's my team.
You're connected.
I'm just telling you, Dotson is absolutely dominating camp. Just absolutely dominating camp.
You've said it several times. The show, follow the money. I like to follow the quarterbacks. So give me Sky Moore with Patrick Mahomes. Give me Romeo Doubs with Aaron Rodgers.
I like the Dobbs one. Dobbs jumps out to me for sure. I love Sky Moore. They got a pretty good group of receivers there.
Sky Moore.
Dobbs, I look at and go, okay, it's Alan Lazard. Christian Watson's not healthy and participating in camp yet, and he's gotten tremendous buzz. And when Aaron Rodgers starts talking about you in training camp, that usually means he likes you. And all you got to do is watch the 49er game last week. They couldn't cover him one-on-one in the first preseason game, to where I could see him being a guy that kind of jumps on the scene and surprises people.
Yeah, we talked about that with Peter King. Peter King said the same thing with his training camp report about that Dubs is like really impressive.
Right.
And so we're on the same page there. It's talent and opportunity. And so that's my only concern on Sky Moore is the opportunity.
But Romeo Doubs can get you some dubs, is what you're saying. All right, that was corny. We're going to take a break across everything else
that was
silly.
corny.
All right, talk about some quarterbacks when we come back. The NBC Sports Edge Fantasy Football Draft Guide is now available. Prep for your draft with the latest player rankings, projections, and so much more. We got you covered for all league formats and draft strategies. Plus, it's powered by Rotoworld, the premier source for player news and fantasy information. And for a limited time, if you use the code DRAFT1, you get access for just $1. That, my friends, is what I call value. Now, as we get into Matthew Berry's top 10 quarterbacks, Matthew, I don't need to tell you the value that comes with the quarterback who can not only throw it, but also run it.
Our friend Rich Rebar always talks about it as a cheat code. Yet, quarterbacks that have dual threat ability, guys like Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, even Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott, they run with their legs. Aaron Rodgers had a lot of rushing touchdowns last year, a lot of cheap rushing touchdowns last year. And of course, obviously, Josh Allen at the top of that list. You need quarterbacks that do one of two things. They either need to have dual threat ability where they run, and guys like Mahomes and Herbert run more than I think people realize, and Dak has over the years as well. Or you need somebody that has massive passing touchdown upside, the way that Brady, the way that Aaron Rodgers does, the way that Mahomes does. You need that. And so other than that, there's too many good quarterbacks. So for you to have an edge at that position on a weekly basis, you need to have a quarterback that has dual threat ability or massive passing touchdown upside.
Chris Sims, Matthew says that people like Patrick Mahomes run more than most people realize.
Right.
Defenses realize that he can kill you with his legs.
Yeah.
Same with Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
But both those guys, though, are known for their passing more than their
Definitely.
rushing prowess. Having said that, both those guys lost their number one receiver. So let's start with Kansas City. What do you think that offense looks like with Patrick Mahomes without Tyreek Hill for him to still come in at QB2?
I just kind of scoff at the idea that the people don't think the Chiefs' offense is going to be great. I mean, again, I think there's some benefits here to not having Tyreek on the field to go, well, who do we play in this situation? Who are they trying to go to? I think it can make the offense more diverse. Andy Reid's one of the best offensive minds in the game. Mahomes is amazing. Him and Josh Allen, to me, are the best quarterbacks in football. And, the running, yes, is nice, and he can score touchdowns doing that and all that as well. But his ability to scramble is where I just go. His ability to scramble, manipulate the defense, and then throw some rocket across the field is really what makes him special and almost indefensible at times. So I don't worry about that offense or Mahomes and stats or anything like that at all.
Same for you, Matt?
Yeah, not at all. I mean, so I trust in Patrick Mahomes. I trust in Andy Reid.
Right.
Great
and by the way,
offensive line.
and great offensive line.
Yep.
And also, look, Tyreek Hill's a special player. There's no question. But Juju's a pretty good player. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, pretty good player.
No doubt.
They still got Travis Kelce.
Right.
They still
Sky Moore.
They got Sky Moore. Mecole Hardman made some plays last year as well.
Right.
So they've got a lot of weapons there. In his career as a starter, Patrick Mahomes played 4 games. Okay, we don't have a lot of sample size, but he has played 4 games without Tyreek Hill. And in those 4 games, he's got 8 touchdowns. He's got 0 interceptions. He's thrown for over 300 yards in all 4 of those games.
Yeah.
I just bet against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid at your own peril.
Yeah.
Would be my take. You saw my
I'm with
ranks.
you
I
there.
have it number 2 overall.
Right.
Only behind Josh Allen at quarterback. And I'm all in on Patrick Mahomes.
Same can be said about Aaron Rodgers. Money in the bank, bet against him at your own peril. Look, small sample size-ish, but 7 games, I believe it is, without Davante Adams.
Yeah.
19 touchdowns and 1 interception.
He's the man. Aaron Rodgers the man. I mean,
You mean
he's
you like
arguably
Aaron Rodgers, Chris
Well, yeah,
Sims?
he's arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. And there's no doubt about that. I think he's in that club. But I don't expect the same statistical output from him this year. I don't think we're going to see 45-6 or, some number like that. I think you could see a year where it's low 30s with, very few interceptions because he never turns the ball over.
Right.
And I will say, too, his running is dropping off. He might still sneak in the end zone a few times, but I don't know. I wouldn't depend on that anymore. I do see a drop-off in his ability to escape the pocket and do some of that stuff. So that's where maybe I could see somewhat of a drop-off for Aaron Rodgers, fantasy and reality to a degree.
Well, right, and that's why I'm at QB 8, right, as opposed to like QB 2 or 3, 2 or 3.
Right.
But he's going as QB 11 on Yahoo. And by the way, he was on QB 12, and I made a big point about it the other day. And so, in my 100 facts column, so maybe we're bumping him up a little bit, but it's still way too low. He's Aaron Rodgers. What are we doing? Think about 2019. Weeks 5 through 8 in the 2019 season, Davante Adams didn't play. Aaron Rodgers was still the second best quarterback in fantasy during that time frame, was scoring over 24 fantasy points per game. Here's the other thing about Aaron Rodgers. Again, I think fantasy analysis too often just looks at points, just looks at stats. And we're talking about people. And I will tell you this about Aaron Rodgers. I've met the guy once. I've met him once in my life, so I don't want to claim that I know him at all.
It's your boy.
But I've studied the man a lot.
They've done studies,
There's not a more petty guy in the NFL. There's not a more chip on his shoulder guy. No, exactly, right? I mean, it's the Michael Jordan meme, and I took that personally. That is Aaron Rodgers, right? Definitely. It's the same thing. Yeah. It's why Jordan was so great. It's why Rodgers is so great. And so trust me when I tell you, when he sees people saying, why'd they give him $150 million? Why he's not going to be good without Davante Adams.
Yeah.
Last year, he didn't make the top 10 of the NFL's top 100.
Yeah.
And what he did, he went out and said, I'm going to be MVP again.
Yeah.
Right.
Make no mistake, he's well aware of everything that people are saying.
Right.
You can't do it without Davante Adams.
Somebody-
And Aaron Rodgers is going to be watch me.
Well, it's just the idea of sleeping on a 2-time reigning MVP is crazy. But we talk
He's
about
going as QB 11.
what
are we doing,
top
people?
Of the show. It's it's a weekly game, and whether his season-long stats are down or not, there are going to be a lot of weeks where you're going to be damn happy to have Aaron freaking Rodgers as your quarterback.
He is. We'd say that same thing we said about Mahomes. I'm sorry, Mike. People that bet against Aaron Rodgers lose. Period. People that bet against Aaron Rodgers lose, and I would say that to fantasy managers that are drafting him outside their top 10 on Yahoo. That might be the craziest draft ADP that I've seen in all of Yahoo.
So even in a battle, an ongoing battle against Father Time, you did not bet against Tom Brady. Do you have any concerns about Brady slowing down?
None whatsoever. He is a genetic freak of nature. Okay, he played at such a high level last year. So when he's 1 year older, no Antonio Brown. Okay, fine. I still think Gronk makes his way back. I have no inside knowledge. I just feel like we haven't seen the last of Rob Gronkowski. But regardless, he's still got Mike Evans. He's still got Chris Godwin. They add Julio Jones. They're going to give Julio Jones some of that magic TB12.
Russell Gage.
They got Russell Gage, who's a nice thing. Yeah. Kyle Rudolph, I think, was a very underrated signing. I don't know that he has massive fantasy value, but he's a nice big red zone target once again for Tom. Again, Tom Brady's not stupid, right? And he doesn't come out of retirement, that month-long retirement, if he didn't think he was going to have a lot of success this year. He doesn't need to prove anything.
Yeah.
He's a first ballot unanimous Hall of Famer.
Sure.
So for him to come back feels like to me is that he looked around and he said, I can be successful once again this year.
And that's that massive touchdown potential and yardage potential that you're talking about with fantasy. I know you just love seeing the rich get richer, don't you, Chris Sims?
Well, he's the man. I will say this. I mean, their team is awesome. We know that. I don't know if the stats will be the same this year. There are two reasons why I'm going to get into this a little bit. One, hey, Bruce Arians not being there, I do think is, there's a little value to that. He is a year older. I look at, Godwin, I don't think is going to be hitting on all cylinders right away. Gronk is not going to be there at least at the early part of the year. The Bucs have the hardest schedule they've had in the years. And to me, the jumps out more than that, they're going to play some teams that can really rush the passer. And Tom Brady, if there's a flaw with him, the O-line is not going to be the same this year. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
They lost a few guys here and there to where I just go, you look at the games he struggled, it's always the Rams, the Saints, those type of teams, because he can't move off the spot and make a lot happen. Yeah. So again, still going to be one of the best teams in football. Statistically, still going to be very good, but I don't think it's going to be 43 touchdowns or something like that this year. I think it does drop just a little bit.
You know what? And by the way, I'm with you. He was the third best quarterback in fantasy last year. I have him at QB5.
Yeah.
So I have him slightly lower than last year. But I think one of the things I like about Brady is the floor. Okay, last year, nine different games with 25 or more fantasy points, led all quarterbacks. 10 games with 20 or more fantasy points, tied for third most among quarterbacks. Like, there's never going to be a week where Tom Brady kills you.
No.
You know what I mean? He's always going to have something. So I agree with you, slightly lower.
Yeah, right.
But like we said about Cooper Kupp, he can be slightly lower and still be a very solid fantasy quarterback for you.
Derrick Henry has been a very solid quarterback for a long time, but fantasy-wise, never had a top 10 season, correct? Feels like that changes this year.
I think so. He flirted with it some last year. He was borderline top 10 for a little bit here. I'm just outside my top 10 again because he doesn't run. But think about this. Here's the entire list of quarterbacks in the NFL that over the last 4 seasons have completed at least 66% of the passes and thrown for 4,000 yards or more each of the last 4 seasons.
Right,
here's the list. Derek Carr.
That
is the list. That is the list, right? He's never missed a game in 4 years, right? Obviously, we talked about the Carr-Adams connection with college, and it's not just adding Davante Adams. It's adding Josh McDaniels. Yeah. That's something that I think gets underrated. And all due respect to Greg Olson, who called the plays, think about Carr last year. The Henry Ruggs situation, the John Gruden being, the Raiders as a franchise went through so much last year.
Yeah. Right.
Derek Carr was, kind of a steady Eddie and did an amazing job. It's incredible that team got to the playoffs. I think they actually should have beaten Cincinnati. I think they got some bad calls. That's another conversation for another show. But my fact is that now coming to clean slate, adding somebody the skill level of Davante Adams and having everyone else back, and plus the creative play calling of a guy like McDaniels, I think Carr could easily be of value this year. There's no question. He's not a sexy guy, but he's currently going, his ADP on Yahoo is quarterback 14. And so I think he matches or at least beats that this year.
I would be shocked if he doesn't. You're right. Grossly underrated, can do a little bit of everything. McDaniels is the best offensive mind. McDaniels is up there with Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Shanahan for the best offensive minds in football over the last 15 years. And then you couple in, like you're talking about, Adams, Waller, Renfro. I think that, I'd be shocked if he doesn't have a real big year. I don't know why you don't have Joe Burrow in the top 10, though.
Yeah. Well, before we get to Burrow, you want to do Joe Burrow?
I don't know. I didn't even know. I don't pay attention to where we're going with this stuff. I just talk.
We go where you want to go.
Yeah, that's all right.
We go where you want to go. Joe Burrow only led the league in completion percentage.
I think the people at home can realize who shows up to rehearsal and who doesn't. That's all good. It's all fine.
Someone's got to work, and we're here all day. Sorry.
Joe Burrow only led the league in completion percentage last year, and now has a better offensive line. Yeah. So your issue with him is what?
My issue with him is, again, as we talk about, I don't hate players. I hate where they go in drafts. And my issue with Joe Burrow isn't Joe Burrow. It's with the drafters on Yahoo that are taking him 5th overall. He's quarterback 5.
Okay.
They're taking him ahead of Aaron Rodgers. They're taking him ahead of Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts.
All right.
I have a concern with this. People see the numbers, and it was a great story. Right? He made the run to the Super Bowl, Bengals in the Super Bowl. He played, and he's fun to root for, right? He's Joe Cool. He is it is a great story. He's an easy guy to root for. I get all
Sounds like
that.
you're saying he overrated. That's what I hear. Overrated.
Yeah,
Or
fantasy
overdrafted.
and overdrafted, which is close, right? Okay, he had 3 games. He had 2 games against Baltimore in the Kansas City game, and those 3 games amounted to 47% of Joe Burrow's fantasy points last year. 47%. The final 2 games, he threw for 971 yards and 8 touchdowns in those final 2 games. Again, it was the Chiefs game and the second Ravens game. And so if you look at the 6 games prior to those 2 games, Joe Burrow threw 6 touchdowns in 6 games. Okay? So my concern here is he doesn't really run. He ran less last year than he did the year before. You know, is he still a little nervous about the offensive line is better, which means they're going to be able to run the ball more.
His knee's going to be better.
His knee will be better, 100%. Right. Again, what we just said is for a quarterback to be inside the top 10, he needs to either have massive passing touchdown upside or have rushing.
Okay.
He's not going to run the way that, you know, the Kylers, the Lamars, the Joshes of the out. So the question is, does he have massive touchdown upside? And I would argue I'm nervous about that because of the inconsistency we saw last year. I think they'll be more effective at running the ball. They've also got a really good defense. So he's not going to get into as many shootouts, right? I think Joe Burrow is a great NFL quarterback, and I think he will be a fine fantasy quarterback.
Right.
I don't think he's a top 5 guy.
Chris, set him straight about this bad mofo.
I don't. This is one I don't agree with Matthew. Yeah, Burrow to me is the natural. I only think it's going to be a jump off of what we saw last year. You're talking about what happened at the end of the year. I just go, yes, and that's what you're going to see continued onto the year. And they're a young football team that I just imagine will only get better. So Burrow to me is super talented. You know, fantasy, I do think there's too much on the running aspect of it, so I understand that aspect where I lose that. But at the same time, I have a hard time thinking that the stats won't be the passing stats that you kind of talk about with some of the other guys with those weapons and just their growth and where they're going.
All right, let me ask you some questions. Let me ask you some questions. Just real quickly. All right. Who'd you rather have? Like, you and I are going to be in a fantasy league this year.
Right.
Who would you rather have, Joe Burrow or Tom Brady?
I mean, Joe Burrow all day. Tom Brady could never. Well, in real life, it's not even close. Tom Brady could never have brought that Bengals team to the Super Bowl last year. Never.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
It's completely derailed this conversation. Wait, in real life,
you'd rather have
Joe Burrow over Tom Brady?
100%. 100%.
You know what? I'm not going to let you do this.
Yeah.
I'm not. No. What I mean by not let you do this is we're out of time in this segment. By the way, the poster child for waiting on a quarterback is Kirk Cousins, but we'll save that for another show. Don't take the bait, Matthew. We're going to break. Do not take the bait.
Joe Burrow was in the Super Bowl.
I've dealt with this. I've dealt with this.
Tom Brady wasn't.
I've had this fight with him.
The first
Joe
year,
Burrow had this fight with him. Tom Brady's not.
Don't let him do it to you.
All day, every day, I'm taking Burrow over Brady.
Burrow or Aaron Rodgers?
What?
Burrow or Aaron Rodgers?
I'm taking Burrow right now. 100%. Burrow's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the game.
Well, at least he's consistent. One of the 5 best? You just took out 2 of the best ones already.
Well, they're not the top 5 to me.
I'm just gonna say this. The views and opinions of Chris Sims do not reflect the opinions of this show or any of its other
I've learned
hosts.
to ignore Chris a long time ago.
No, you didn't. You asked me on your show every week. You're begging me.
Don't mean I ignore you. It's good TV.
Listen to me.
It's crazy, but it's good TV.
He went through about 10 boxes. I'm a big Frosted Flakes guy, and this is the Kelsey Crunch version of it for sure. And I think it has a little bit more sugar, but don't ask me.
Better than that stuff Pat was selling a couple years ago?
Listen, it might not have any magic in it, but it's pretty good.
He is the Frosted Flakes of tight ends.
Yeah.
Like, just reliable, just go to. It's like, you don't need to worry about it. You just plug and play Travis Kelce, and you reap the benefits of one of the great and most productive tight ends in NFL history.
Yeah,
that's fantasy goodness.
That's the smile of a guy who knows he's getting a lot of targets with Tyreek Hill.
Absolutely.
Out of the way. We heard Peter King talk about it as well. Yeah.
So here are your top 10 tight ends. You got Mark Andrews as your number 1, and Kyle Pitts is your number 3, Darren Waller, George Kittle. Those are the elite guys. How do you approach the tight end position during snake redrafts?
Generally speaking, I either want to be one of the first guys in my league to get a tight end or one of the last.
Okay.
So the Andrews, Kelce, Pitts, that's a tier right there.
Yeah.
Much as I love Waller and Kittle, I think Schultz has a nice year as well. because there's so many targets available in Dallas, given the lack of other pass catchers they have. Hawkinson, same thing here. Zach Ertz, to me, is a really interesting guy who I have him at 8. He's going way too low for me in terms of where he's going on Yahoo. He's currently going 10th overall, 88th overall, 10th at tight end. He's a top 5 fantasy tight end on a points per game basis in 4 of the 5 seasons he was in Philadelphia as well. 11 games that he was in Arizona, top 4 in the NFL in targets per game, red zone targets, and receptions per game among tight ends. And now he's got a full offense. Right, and that's what he's just showing up there. He's trying to figure out where his locker is, right? And he suddenly shows up there. I think he's a good red zone threat. So I think he's being underdrafted as well. Talked about this. I think there's so many tight ends that you can get later.
Okay. Now you're speaking my language.
Right, exactly.
I like to wait. I like to wait on tight end. So tell me some
the difference
guys.
between tight end 8 and tight end like 14, 15 isn't that much. You can find that production. You can also stream the position as well. I think Pat Freiermuth is going to take another step this year. I think he's being undervalued. I like Gerald Everett of the Chargers. I like Logan Thomas of my Commanders. When he comes back, he's not going to start the season healthy. But how about Cole Kmet? Cole Kmet is currently going at number 189 on Yahoo, tight end 19. Get this. He had 60 receptions last year and 0 touchdowns. That's insanely unlucky.
Yeah, you want to talk about
60 receptions, 0 touchdowns. That is the most catches in a season without scoring since at least 2002.
Yeah.
And some of the guys, like Jimmy Graham and Jesper and like other tight ends that were there, they're all gone.
Right. Touchdowns,
Allen Robinson is gone.
Yeah.
And so
I like that.
Cole Kmet, who is one of the league leaders in tight ends in terms of running routes, in terms of snaps played. Now he just got unlucky with the touchdowns. But I think his second year of Justin Fields, he is going to be the guy. And there's really opportunity beyond Darnell Mooney in terms of the passing in that Chicago offense. So, give me some Cole Kmet this year.
Yeah, that's what I want out of my tight end position. I mean, I've taken Kelsey early before. I've taken Gronk early back in the day. But I just feel like this year I want to go wide receiver, maybe even running back. I might depart from my 0 running back and wait on tight end.
The fact of the matter is that what those guys do, if you go elite, if you go Kelsey, Andrews, or Pitts, Pitts is going to have a monster season, right?
Yeah.
What happens there is that you get a weekly win at that position, and you're going to have to find value elsewhere, right? That's all what a draft is just finding value at some point. So the question is, if you're not getting elite at the tight end position, I'd rather try to find value at the position and make sure I lock in a rock solid, rock solid production at wide receiver and running back.
So it's a remix of Ricky Bobby from Talladega Nights. If you ain't first, you're last. At tight end, either be first or last.
There you go.
All right. Coming up, we're going to talk about Joe Burrow's recovery from his appendectomy, and also the latest news out of Browns training camp. No shortage of storylines when it comes to that offense. Stick around.
I don't know if it's a baseball or a football injury. I'm currently play football, so I guess it's on a football player, so it's a football injury at this point. But I'm not really too worried about what it's called or whether it's abnormal or not or whatever. I'm worried about here today, how did I feel? Let's continue to progress and get better.
I was to Matthew Stafford's left, Matthew Berry, and I can tell you he was more irritated by the questions about his elbow injury than he seems to be irritated by the actual injury itself. Nonetheless, it's a huge question. Here to help us answer this question is Mike Ryan, who brings 30 years of athletic training experience in the NFL to the show and to the program. Appreciate you joining us, Mike. What are your thoughts on both this particular injury to Matthew Stafford and the Rams' management of said injury, along with Stafford's availability and productivity for the upcoming season?
Well, great questions, Michael. I think what he's dealing with here is a chronic tendon issue, tendonitis of the elbow. And interesting, with this kind of an injury, that's where they're going back and forth. Is it kind of a baseball injury? He's had this issue in the past. In a sense, it's been an issue. Sean McVay mentioned they've had elbow issues off and on. And I think because of this, an elbow issue, mostly a chronic tendonitis, ironically, those elbow ligaments at the tendons, at the elbow, affect more the hand than they do the elbow itself. So early in the offseason, they did a PRP injection, which is kind of like a healing espresso shot, if you will, right into the injury itself. And I think that showed both the level of concern that the Rams have, but also smart nature in the sense they're focusing on September, getting him ready there, not focusing on the July. So I think this issue that he has is something that may linger for a while. Do I really have concerns he'll be behind center week 1? Absolutely not. But this is something he's going to have to manage as they're doing in this whole offseason with not a lot of throwing and getting him ready for September, and something that he probably will deal with most of the season.
Well, Mike, if you have no concerns, then we have no concerns. That's a huge sigh of relief to fantasy managers that we expect Stafford to be under center week 1 for the Rams, right here, by the way, on NBC.
Absolutely.
Of course, a company man. Look, Mike, I'm curious about Joe Burrow. Returned to practice on Sunday, the first time since he had that appendectomy. Any concerns about Burrow moving forward, who I understand from Chris Sims is a better quarterback than Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers combined?
It seems that way, and obviously Chris loves him for good reason. I think the thing with this, Matthew, is the fact that, yes, in a little less than 3 weeks, he was back in the field throwing a little bit on Sunday. You know, a lot of people say this isn't a big deal, and ironically, the people that say that surgeries are not a big deal are the ones on the dull side of the knife, if you will, not on the sharp side. I think the thing here is, with his injury and the surgery itself, the big deal is obviously they open up his abdomen. Anytime you put tools and sutures and cameras into an abdomen, it's a big deal. If we look at week 1, that's a little short of 7 weeks post-injury. The concern for him isn't necessarily, I think, the injury itself, the appendectomy. It's more from the surgery. So when they do that, his whole digestive system tends to shut down. So the real high priority for him now, get his digestive system up and running, get him back to the fact that he can hydrate well and eat well and really get himself back to training at a high level as a football player. And I look at that for 2 reasons. Number one, and the obvious, is the performance. He has to be able to fuel himself like a professional athlete to perform that way. But the athletic trainer and physical therapist, and he says he has to be safer from a safety perspective. And what I mean by that is if he doesn't have the muscle mass on him, if he doesn't have the ability to hydrate himself, we look at week 1, that's in Pittsburgh at a 1 o'clock game. So he has to get himself ready. Probably won't see him taking any snaps in the preseason. So his kind of welcome back, so to speak, will be from the Pittsburgh defense at a 1 o'clock game where he's going to have 4 hot quarters to play. So the big question here is, can his entire body be ready to play football come September 11th? Again, a little under 7 weeks post-surgery. I think that's a big question that everyone, obviously Bengal fans included, really have to see that answer. We probably won't know that till 3:30 on September 11th.
By the way, Chris Sims just texted me and told me that he has the answer and that Joe Burrow is going to walk on the 3 rivers to the stadium. He'll be just fine. Don't you worry about it. He doesn't need food because he's not an actual mortal human being. Anyway, that's per Chris Sims, just FYI.
Hey,
Here.
Hey, Mike, if I were so fortunate as to have a top 2 or 3 pick in a snake draft, in a redraft, I got to admit that I'd be cautious about drafting Christian McCaffrey, simply put, because I think he's injury prone. Is that fair?
Well, he has a list. Let's put it this way, a backup to that answer. He's had a list of injuries. As you saw, he had the ankle injury last year. He had the hamstring before that. He went on IR twice. I think he played a grand total of 7 games last season in 2020 where he had an high ankle sprain, shoulder, quad, had a lot of things going on, only played 3 games. So he's only played 10 games in the last 2 seasons. So from a list of injuries, yes, he's prone to it. I thought it was really interesting. Head coach Rule said on Friday, he said, well, we're going to be smart with him. But then in the same press conference, he said, hey, he plays in a high-risk position, and we're just going to put him out there and play. So you're taking a guy who has some bumps and bruises. I think all those injuries he's had were very legitimate for the kind of play that Christian plays and the way he plays. So I don't necessarily say he's injury-prone, but has his risk of injury and potential downtime increased? Absolutely. Because of those injuries, especially with an ankle injury, I think that comes into play. He's had ankle injuries the last 2 seasons. So I think there is a big concern for him, not necessarily starting early in the season, but what's his productivity and can he stay on the field come especially that second half of the season? So I have my concerns as well.
Yeah, certainly. And I think fantasy managers certainly, they're well aware. If you're drafting Christian McCaffrey, the ultimate risk-reward pick, he's missed much of the last 2 games, but when he's been out there, he's been nothing short of amazing. And when he's out there this year, we expect him once again to be incredible. Just sort of for fantasy managers, how lucky do you feel? how lucky do you feel? And I have that question about Michael Thomas. You know, in some ways very similar to Christian McCaffrey in this sense, that for a number of years, Christian McCaffrey was fantasy royalty. And then the last 2 years, there's been questions about that because, and only because of the health. Michael Thomas the same way. For years, fantasy royalty, often the number 1 or number 2 wide receiver in fantasy that was drafted. And then the last 2 years, it's just, you know, health, and there's also, feels like some bad vibes coming out of New Orleans. But early reports in camp are good. Should we trust those, Mike?
Well, I think he set the stage real well for that, Matthew, because if you look at his injuries, what he has, his issue is an ankle. You know, it's not multiple injuries, it's an ankle, but it's a bad one. You go back to week 1 in 2020 when Latavius Murray ran up on the back of his ankle. That's a classic look for a high ankle sprain. Ankle is pinned to the ground, high rotation, and that's a great way to disrupt the whole lower part of that shin. So it was a legitimate injury. 2020 only played 7 games because of that. And then I thought it was very interesting that they got till in June of 2021 before he had a surgery on that ankle. So it's something that maybe in hindsight it should have been done early, but the bottom line is it was done in June of 2021, and he missed the entire season last year. So I feel bad for Michael because this has been a really hard couple of years of coming out very high play, like you said, Matthew, of him really struggling. I think when you get multiple high ankle sprains, he's re-injured that ankle as well. When you get that, what you tend to get with is you tend to get some chronic instability of the ankle. And that's a real concern. And you get an ankle instability, it's like out trying to play basketball with no shoelaces in one shoe. That ankle has some extra play. It makes it very difficult for a skilled player, especially someone like Michael Thomas, who changes direction so hard and so well. Suddenly it's a way of really hampering the way his ability to play. And I think another indicator of the confidence that the Saints have or lack thereof is he started the season on PUP. And to be on the physically unable to perform list means obviously you're not able to do what you need to do, but it's also very indicative that he did not take a single rep with the team drills during the offseason. And I think that says something because with this kind of an injury, especially with being over a couple of years now, the repetitions that he has to do and his ability to do that consistently, it doesn't take an x-ray or a fancy treatment. It takes repetition of a skilled player to do what he does at full speed to gain that kind of confidence. So he didn't get team reps during the offseason. He starts a season, the training camp on PUP. Now he's out there practicing a little bit. So I could see him with that ankle being on the field at the start of the season. But will he actually, I'll show you an ankle model with that. But the question with him is, will that ankle hold up for a long period of time in the performance? How much has he stepped back, so to speak, because of that injury? When you look at a high ankle sprain, it's disrupting the membrane that goes between the 2 bones of the shin itself. So now instead of just being a quote-unquote lateral ankle sprain that we all get here and there, now the whole stability of the lower shin becomes compromised. So that's why it makes it so difficult for a skilled player with a high ankle sprain to come back and to play at a very high level.
Well, look, one of the things I would say is that hopefully the additions that the Saints have made maybe eases that off a little bit, right? So, I mean, they drafted Chris Olave. They added Jarvis Landry in the offseason as well. They have high expectations for Adam Trautman at tight end. Looks like Alvin Kamara will be around for the full season, at least at the moment. And so hopefully maybe slightly less usage on him will preserve him. It is worth noting, the last time he had a full season, he set the NFL record for most receptions in an NFL season. And I think the concern with Thomas is baked into his ADP. He's currently going as wide receiver 29 on Yahoo, around the 8th or 9th round. And at that price point, I'm in. I'm in on Michael Thomas because we know what the upside is, and the cost isn't that, isn't terrible. Again, he's going as a low-end wide receiver 3 because the upside is so great. To me, that's an encouraging report from you, Mike. So I'm excited about Thomas.
I think also indications in this, Matthew, to your point, is he's a really hard worker. He's put a lot of effort into it. So to get over this injury, especially being a chronic in nature, the work ethics and the time you have to put into it, he's paying that price and he's putting that effort in. I think that's obviously kind of an up arrow, if you will, of him when he gets on the field to be able to stay on the field.
NBC Sports medicine analyst Mike Ryan, already in regular season form. We look forward to talking to you throughout the year, my friend. Thank you so much. Coming up, we're going to pivot to NBC Sports NFL insider Mike Florio, who I don't know, something tells me he's pretty excited about joining the show.
I'm delighted we have Matthew Berry. I told him I'm at a point in my life where I really don't want to meet any new people, but I was very glad to meet him and get to know him, and reluctantly expanded my list of friends. He may not feel the same way, but at least from my perspective, which takes a lot for me at this point to welcome someone in. Hell, it took me a while to welcome you in 5 years ago, so it's even more difficult to get over the wall now. Not that they're lining up to get over the wall, but that's okay. I still have a wall.
The Grinch, I'm sorry, Mike Florio is here.
Don't talk about my friend like that.
My God. Wait,
don't talk about my friend
that was
like
very
that.
Sweet. I'm more concerned about Florio's general disposition at this point. He sounds concerned about it's really hard to get close to Mike Florio.
It's self-awareness, but clearly Michael Smith knows he's not getting over the wall.
It
so
sounds
now
like
you're throwing him under the bus.
It sounds like it. I'm comfortably on this side of the wall. I guess I better make myself comfortable.
Well, no. Again, the line is not long, Michael. It's not like you have to wait for a very long time to get your answer, yes or no. But self-awareness can be a good thing. Self-awareness can be a bad thing. I am fully aware of where I am in life, and I want no new friends. But I have one in Matthew Berry, and I'll work on one in Michael Smith.
I appreciate that. Well, listen, let's make everybody aware that we're recording this before any announcement of Deshaun Watson's appeal of his the NFL's appeal of Deshaun Watson's 6-game suspension. I beg your pardon. And when we get that word, we know that Mike Florio will be the first, if not among the first, to be aware of how long Deshaun Watson will actually be suspended. What do you know at the moment, and how should fantasy managers, for purposes of this show, approach Deshaun Watson if they're looking at him at quarterback?
Well, guys, as we're having this discussion, we are 13 days removed from the day that the NFL appealed the 6-game suspension. The rules don't set a deadline specifically for resolving the appeal, but the rules say that the appeal must be expedited. 13 days does not feel expedited to me. I thought we were going to have something last week, that first Friday of the preseason. Peter Harvey, who's handling the appeal, I believe is giving both sides ample opportunity to work out a settlement. I was told on Monday that it's about a 50-50 proposition. I always hate 50-50 because anybody can say 50-50, but that's what I was told. It's 50-50 as to whether or not it settles. Watson, according to the AP, as of last week, willing to do 8 games and pay a $5 million fine. I suspect the NFL's floor is 12. Could they split the difference to 10? Peter Harvey, as we speak, giving them ample opportunity to do that. And at some point, the process ends. At some point, he has to rule. And if he has to rule, it's going to be, I think, a full season subject to a federal court challenge that the union is confident about. But I don't know why they would be, because even though they've had initial success in past cases, they tend to always end up losing these.
Yeah, the NFL seems hung up on him not going back to Houston week 12. Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, look, with the caveat, of course, that it feels really silly to talk about Deshaun Watson from a fantasy football point of view.
Fair enough.
Given the seriousness of the allegations against him, right? I mean, so let's just call it like that. But we are a fantasy football show. He is a significant player in the world of fantasy football, so we do have to get into this a little bit. Yahoo drafters are basically ignoring it. They are obviously expecting a significantly longer suspension than 6 games. He's going as quarterback 22. He's only being drafted in 28% of leagues. So most leagues he's not even being drafted in, and when he is being drafted, he's being drafted as quarterback 22. So I think most people are assuming, to your point, Mike, that it's going to be a much longer suspension. It's going to be a run-first offense, and I suppose that if you were in a deeper league and you wanted to take a flyer late in your draft and hope that he maybe plays at some point this year, understood. But I would...
Maybe a dynasty pick.
Yeah, and certainly in dynasty he has value. But I would be concerned about counting on Deshaun Watson for significant fantasy production for any significant period of time this year, especially, what I'm hearing, and Mike, what you're saying as well. It sounds like that, if Deshaun's current status is, hey, I'll sit out 8 games, and he's missing at least half the season, if not more. And so I think that affects not just obviously his fantasy value, but the value of all the Browns pass catchers. We talked about Amari Cooper earlier in the show. Mike, I'm out on him at his current ADP. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. That's who you want. You want Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. It's going to be a run-first team, especially if Jacoby Brissett is under center for a significant period of time. And I think David Njoku as a tight end too. But other than that, I think Cleveland is pretty much a more of an interesting NFL story than fantasy story this year.
Yeah, I think you're right. And look, separating the reasons why he won't be an attractive fantasy player from the fact that he does fit that mold. And I think we all have a smart ass or two in our league that likes to grab that guy that no one's thinking about that could make a difference later, whether it's Antonio Brown last year or at some, in past years it's been Antonio Brown, Josh Gordon, that guy that, hey, maybe we're going to get lucky. Maybe we're going to have a guy that shows up late in the season and make a big difference. And there's a chance that could be Deshaun Watson. If it ends up being 12 games, it's right in time for playoffs. You're holding them in your back pocket. I'm sure every league or plenty of leagues will have one person who decides that I'm just going to keep Deshaun Watson on ice because you never know what's going to happen come week 12, 13, 14.
Yeah. Hey, there was some talk about Jimmy Garoppolo potentially, being a solution for Cleveland if they, weren't sold for whatever reason on Jacoby Brissett. But that doesn't seem to be in the plans. What's up with Jimmy Garoppolo? Still do $25 million this year, which the Niners aren't paying.
Well, when it was 6 to 8 games that the Browns thought they would not have Deshaun Watson, then it's Jacoby Brissett, and we'll wait for Deshaun. Once they started to get the impression that maybe it's going to be the full season, that's when Jimmy Garoppolo's name started to come up. So we're still kind of in a holding pattern as to how long the Browns won't have Deshaun Watson. Garoppolo could become relevant there. What the 49ers are doing, guys, they're just waiting for lightning to strike somewhere and take out a starting quarterback for the season. Because then the 49ers get trade value for Jimmy Garoppolo like the Eagles did 6 years ago when the Vikings suddenly lost Teddy Bridgewater and gave up a first-round pick and a fourth-round pick for Sam Bradford. And Garoppolo gets far closer to his $25 million than whatever he's going to get when he's finally cut by the 49ers, if that's what happens and he becomes a free agent. So both sides are on the same page that, hey, if somebody gets very unlucky at quarterback, they get lucky, 49ers get something, Garoppolo gets paid, and he goes to a new team. And the question is, how long are the 49ers going to perpetuate this ruse? Are they going to push it all the way up to the day before their first game of the regular season at Chicago? Are they going to do it when they cut the rosters on August 30 to 53 or somewhere in between? Or would they be crazy enough to keep him into the regular season and let that salary fully guarantee? If you're a vested veteran, 4 or more years of service, your salary fully guarantees week 1. And he's going to clearly and gladly take the balance of that money if he gets cut at some point after that. I don't think they'll do that, but right now they're just waiting. And I think we all wait. And he becomes the injury replacement if, Zach Wilson's knee injury had ended up being worse than it initially looked it was going to be. That's a place he could have gone. Other teams are going to be potentially in that same mold. We got 2 more weeks of preseason to get through.
Speaking of waiting, we've been waiting on clarity when it comes to Alvin Kamara's discipline from the NFL. But lately, reportedly, it may not happen this year. His attorneys have pushed the hearings and so on and so forth. You're the lawyer. You could explain that better than I can. Is Alvin Kamara in the clear for this season with regard to discipline from the NFL?
Well, the reality is the wheels of justice often do grind very slowly. There was a hearing August 1, and all that happened at the hearing was the case was kicked 2 months down the road. These are felony battery charges that Alvin Kamara faces. And when you read the personal conduct policy, there's not a very difficult case to make for him ending up on paid leave. I'm not sure why the NFL hasn't done it. I've asked them about it from time to time, and I know how they work well enough that when they don't respond to me, they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to shine a light on it. They don't want stories to be written about it. For whatever reason, they've decided not to put him on paid leave. I don't expect him to be put on paid leave before week 1. So the question is, when the case resolves, how does it resolve, and what will the punishment be after the fact? And the way it's going now, to get to the point where the legal case resolves, the league would do its investigation. We learned a lot about what happens now with the league's personal conduct policy because of Deshaun Watson's case. You have Judge Sue L. Robinson who gets involved and makes her decision. Then you got the appeal process. It is reasonable to think that we're going to get through the full season without any action being taken against Alvin Kamara because the immediate roadblock is resolving the criminal case. And if there's going to be a trial at some point, it's probably not going to be until calendar year 2023. So unless the league would decide to put him on paid leave, and if they want to, they can, but they've shown no inclination to do it. If they don't do that, he's free and clear all year long.
And it's interesting because he's currently going as running back 12 on Yahoo. I think people were concerned about he's going to miss 6 games. He's going to have some sort of suspension. But again, because the wheels of justice grind slowly, as you put it, I actually think, again, it feels dumb to talk about him in a fantasy perspective given the seriousness of the charges. But from a fantasy football point of view, I think Alvin Kamara is actually an amazing value this year. We talked about him at the top of the show as well, that if he's going to play all games, or at least be eligible to play all games this year, guy who's normally a top 5 fantasy running back going as running back 12 is a real value. And so I think that's really interesting. Mike, I know you talk to general managers and coaches and scouts around the league every single day. Give me one player. For the people that aren't watching this, give me one player that you're hearing the most buzz about in training camp so far.
Well, this one seems pretty obvious just because he created so much buzz on Saturday night in the preseason opener against the Seahawks. But George Pickens, the Steelers receiver, the second rounder who tore the ACL in spring practice in 2021 and slid farther than maybe he should have. And there's some questions, but the Steelers have shown over the years that they know how to draft and develop great young receivers at every round. Their misses are far fewer and farther between than they are for any other team. They've had so many star players from rounds 2 through round 7, and Pickens just instantly looks the part. And for buzz to be coming out of Steelers training camp, an old school team first atmosphere where it's not conducive to anyone being the centerpiece of attention, especially in a year when they're having their first quarterback competition in a generation, to me, that just shows how much talent this kid has, because the Steelers would love to put a lid on any of that, and they can't. That's how good he is. The question is, who's getting him the football, and how effective will that part of the offense be, and how much will they even throw it with Najee Harris? But George Pickens is a fascinating talent at a time when they've paid Deontay Johnson for a couple of years. Nobody knows what they really think about Chase Claypool. Is he going to be there long term? Pickens is a guy who can make a big splash right away. But again, it's all relative to how much the Steelers are even going to be throwing the football in 2022.
I actually think they're going to be more successful throwing the football this year than they were last year. I honestly think Mitchell Trubisky and or Kenny Pickett would be an upgrade over what Ben Roethlisberger was last year. You know, genuinely. I mean, listen, Big Ben's a Hall of Famer, but not based on what he did last year. And so, as you said, Mike, when the Steelers draft a wide receiver, you pay attention. So I think Pickens is a really interesting player, and a lot of people do, by the way. Now the favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, George Pickens.
Certainly a favorite dynasty pick, if nothing else.
Yep.
Pickett to Pickens certainly has a nice ring to it. We'll see if it rolls that easily on the field as it does off the tongue. Mike Florio, we appreciate the insight, brother. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you throughout the year.
Thank you, my new
friend. Great talking to you guys.
Oh,
Take
y'all
care.
gonna talk y'all gonna talk all the time anyway. Y'all probably gonna call each other after this.
Yeah, we're gonna text each other about how good the segment went.
Michael, the wall's there, the door's cracked open. All you got to do is give it a little push. And you're inside too, if you want to be.
I will find my way to your heart one way or the other, Mike Florio.
All right,
Thank you.
All right,
man.
good deal, guys.
Take care.
Josh Allen, have a great year. Thanks
Peter.
a lot.
Appreciate you. Oh,
for NBC Sports Bills Camp, this is Peter King. All the best to you.
You still got it?
Yeah, we got it.
Thank you.
I'll see you. We did it.
Way to hang in the pocket there, Josh Allen. Under pressure. Peter King is crisscrossing the country on his annual training camp tour. Today, he is in Irvine, California for Rams camp. But he joins us now from his very neat and well-kept hotel room with his nice made bed. So he's getting mileage, he's getting hotel points and cool points with housekeeping because he's got a nice, neat hotel room.
I just like the fact that Josh Allen didn't waver. He did
not.
He kept it there.
He stayed there.
And then you notice Peter, like when he's done with his little, like, you know, for NBC Sports on Peter King, then he turns to him like sort of like, hey, that was great, thanks. Like not even recognizing it. And Josh,
I had no clue.
Yeah, at the very end, if you notice, Josh says, well, I had my hand out, I was trying to shake, and then Peter's like just dismisses it. It's like, yeah, we got it. We did a shake. I shook your hand. What are you doing, Josh Allen? There you go. I like that. Smooth.
But the great one, Matthew, the great one was when I went to Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes had seen it, so before we started, he wanted to do something afterwards to sort of stick it into Josh. So if you look at the tape, the full tape, I'm not sure how much we actually ran of it, but He shook my hand once, and he said, "Hey, give me another shake. Come on in." So he took a long, and he wouldn't let go of my hand. Anyway,
that's fantastic.
I think that was one quarterback sort of needling another.
That's fantastic. The lesson is, when you get left hanging, just hang in there. And you can catch all of Peter's training camp tour videos, of course, at youtube.com/NFL on NBC. You got
Peter, as you go on the rest of this tour, and we saw the graphic before, I just think you should make it a goal to each time with the starting quarterback of that team, make it a little bit of a longer handshake, so that by the very end of the tour, it's like you and Davis Mills shaking hands for like 20 minutes. That's what I think it should be.
Hey, I hope I get to shake Matthew Stafford's hand today, and I'll try to be gentle because I don't want to aggravate his elbow.
Oh, yeah.
No, please don't. Shake his left hand.
I was out there recently at Rams camp, and he's more irritated by questions about his elbow than he is the actual elbow. But we'll get to that another time. But you mentioned Chiefs camp. You've been out there to Kansas City's camp. You have seen the Chiefs in person. How is that wide receiver, and for that matter, running back pecking order playing out around the aforementioned Patrick Mahomes?
Well, I think it's given Mahomes really new life. It's definitely given Andy Reid new life because they hear the outside world. They're really going to be diminished without Tyreek Hill. But I think the one guy here, for fantasy purposes, who I'd be very interested in is Juju Smith-Schuster. Look, McCole Hardman is going to get the opportunity to be Tyreek Hill in many ways. Maybe he will be. But all I know is that the day I was there, I expected to see Juju Smith-Schuster planted in the slot like he was in Pittsburgh over the years. Juju Smith-Schuster was all over the formation. So that's one thing. He's deliriously happy, loves his role. It really has brought a good spirit to Kansas City with him. And the other guy who I think is going to be very interesting there is Sky Moore. I think Sky Moore will be a Swiss Army knife. I think he will be a poor man's Deebo Samuel. And I have no idea how much he'll play, how many snaps he'll get, but those are two guys who intrigue me in Kansas City.
Peter, I love the call of Juju Smith-Schuster, and I think you're absolutely right. I think people forget just how bad Ben Roethlisberger was the last 2 years, and people forget how good Juju was his rookie year, his second year. He was explosive. He was making big plays down the field, and then they ended up turning him into, in Pittsburgh the last 2 years, they turned him into Ryan Switzer, like this possession receiver, because literally Ben's arm was shot and he couldn't go down the field. Now he goes from Ben Roethlisberger to Patrick Mahomes. We talked early in the show about how big a quarterback upgrade makes. Think about Cooper Kupp going from Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford last year. So going from last year Ben Roethlisberger to current day Patrick Mahomes is just a massive upgrade. And you consider the fact that with Byron Pringle and Tyreek Hill out, 219 targets from Andy Reid's offense last year are up for grabs. Look at this stat, Peter. Last year, in his career, Juju Smith-Schuster's had 36 games where he's gotten 7 or more targets. In those games, he averages 18.1 fantasy points per game. I think Juju is a fantastic value this year because everyone's like, is it going to be him? Is it going to be MVS? He was bad the last 2 years with Ben. I don't think they appreciate what you saw at Chiefs camp, which is that Juju is still, he's still 25. Yeah, I mean, people forget, he's been in the league so long, they forget how young he was when he came in. So love the call of Juju. And as for Sky Moore, trendy sleeper, but after Kelsey and Juju, I don't know that there's enough targets to go around for consistent fantasy value for a third person in the Chiefs offense. So Moore is a guy to, I think, is a better dynasty pick than necessarily a redraft guy, although I don't mind a late flyer on him in drafts.
Yeah, the one other thing I would say is, last year, and look, I'm not familiar with all the fantasy implications of this, but last year, Mark Andrews was everybody's darling in fantasy football, rightfully so. I would be surprised this year if Mark Andrews' production outpaced Travis Kelce's. And in my feeling, or my feeling is that the security blanket in Kansas City, particularly early, is going to be more important than ever. I really like Kelce.
And that's just the wide receiver room. Certainly a lot of intrigue at running back as well. with Isaiah Pacheco being a star at camp in the backfield. But let's move on to the Packers pass catchers. Like Patrick Mahomes losing Tyreek Hill, of course, Aaron Rodgers lost Davante Adams. How is that wide receiver hierarchy taking form? Is it rookie Romeo Doubs, Aaron Rodgers' number one guy?
That's how it looked to me when I was there. But, again, Michael, I think we got to be careful of what happens in the summer. We have to be careful at training camp about what happens for a very simple reason. I've been doing this now honestly, I've been going to training camps for 38 years. And so often you get fooled by what you saw in one or two practices. What I saw in Green Bay was Romeo Doubs, the 4th-round pick from Nevada, all over the field, getting tremendous respect from veteran defensive backs after catches. Going up to him and tapping his helmet, fist bumping, whatever. And you can tell that the respect is there. They think that this guy is a big timer and is going to play a big role right away. I think the biggest question is Christian Watson has missed some time, obviously, with a bad back. Romeo Doubs is just leap in front of him. And who knows what that portends for October and November. But for right now, I would be surprised if it wasn't Lazard and Doubs 1A and 1B. I think their production's going to be close early.
Wow, that would be fantastic if Doubs somehow matched or was close to Allen Lazard's production, because I think everyone's going into the season assuming Lazard's clearly the number one. And yeah, I think there was a lot of early buzz on Christian Watson when he got drafted, but I've heard Aaron Rodgers talk up Doubs as well. Hearing what you're saying here as well, Peter, is interesting. Aaron Rodgers is not a guy that sort of blows smoke. When he's very specific in front of the media, and so for him to mention Doubs in a positive light the way he has, I think has a specific reason. So I'm there. It is worth noting, obviously, with Davante Adams now in Las Vegas, there's some massive fantasy appeal here in what we expect to still be one of the best offenses in the NFL with one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Get this, and with Allen Lazard, he's had 6 different games in his career with 6 targets or more. In those games, 16.1 fantasy points per game. Lazard had like a 6 for 146 and a touchdown in the one game that Davante Adams didn't play last year as well. It would be hard for me to think Doubs has that kind of production. But again, I think he's a name that isn't on a lot of people's radars at the moment. Peter, Doubs is being drafted in just 4% of Yahoo leagues, just 4%. So
that
hearing what you're saying,
mistake.
Huge
That's
mistake.
A huge mistake.
Absolutely.
You're not if you're not drafting however many rounds you're going to have in your draft. If you're not drafting, if he goes undrafted in your league, you're not paying attention. He's going to have production in that offense.
Yeah, and if you're not listening to and reading Peter King, you're doing it wrong. But we've known that for a lot of years.
Long
Peter.
time.
Thank you so much for taking the time out, man. Cheers. We will pour you a drink next time we see you.
Thank you.
Make sure you
Michael,
check out
I just want you to think of one name now. One name.
Okay.
Wan'Dale Robinson. All you people in the last round of your draft, if he's there, take him and thank me later.
Will do. Wan'Dale Robinson, New York Giants rookie wide receiver, 2nd-round pick out of Kentucky. Peter King's training camp tour videos available at youtube.com/NFL on NBC. Thanks so much, Peter.
All right, guys, take care.
Welcome in our friend Roto Pat with his bold predictions. This is the fun time. We've been building to this.
Yeah.
It is time for some bold predictions. And Roto Pat, don't do nothing boring. Don't tell us something you said somewhere else. Don't tell us something that somebody else is saying. Be big, be bold, go hard, or go home, Roto Pat. So with that, give us your first bold prediction for the 2022 fantasy season.
Yeah, I'm going to do my best, but I was joking with someone yesterday, like, I'm like so hyper conservative in my personal life. Like I count like my number of beers. I wear shoes in the house. Like I'm a very conservative person, and it's hard for me to be bold. But you know, it's not that I don't think those thoughts. I just like don't ever want to share them. But all summer I've been thinking like I don't want any part of Leonard Fournette this season. I don't think he's going to be a top 24 running back, and it's kind of been memory hold that before Leonard Fournette was Lombardi Lenny, he was healthy scratch Lenny. in December of 2020. He totally backed into that job. He has not done everything he could to keep it. He has missed 6 games the past 2 years. He quite infamously reported to minicamp at 260 pounds this summer. They're breaking in 3 new starters along the interior line. He's an inefficient runner. He's never been an efficient pass catcher. He's not overly explosive after first contact anymore. His touchdown totals have never been as crazy as you would expect in this offense because Tom Brady is so deadly in the red zone, and he's been buttering his bread in fantasy on those receptions, and it's just not a role like he's really made for. Like, he, to his credit, he has done his best with it and stepped in when they really needed him. But they have Rachaad White again, and people I think sort of assume Keyshawn Vaughn bombed with Tom Brady. It's so hard for a rookie running back to gel with Tom Brady that we don't. Some people aren't really taking Rachaad White seriously, but I mean, a 3rd round pick. I think the Bucs have to see the same thing I see with Leonard Fournette on 3rd down. That's just not a role that he's most natural at. And I think Rachaad White is a real threat. And I just think things are kind of building for Leonard Fournette after a really charmed year and a half to just kind of fall in fantasy.
All right. That's pretty bold. What you got, Matthew?
That is pretty well. And we mentioned in the Zero RB segment, we mentioned Rachaad White as somebody to look at. Leonard Fournette, by the way, currently going as running back 11 on Yahoo. So for for RotoPat to say he won't finish inside the top 24. And again, it's a bold prediction. In fairness, it's a bold prediction.
Yes.
But certainly something to look out for. So here's a bold prediction. Kirk Cousins over 40 touchdown passes. Is that bold enough?
Poster child for weight on quarterback is Kirk Cousins for me. I love that prediction.
Is that bold enough, or do I need to go bolder with Kirk Cousins? Is that
over 40? No, I was going to go 50. No, 40's good. 40's great.
That's thermonuclear, Matthew. That's thermonuclear.
I want to make sure that was bold enough, because what I was going to say is, if I want to go super bold, I might say Kirk Cousins leads the NFL in touchdown passes. I'm just telling you, look, getting Kevin O'Connell and getting Wes Phillips into that offense, I think people forget. I'd say over 40 touchdown passes. He threw 33 last year.
Yeah, his career high is 35.
Right. He's thrown over 30 each of the last 2 years. And again, that's been a conservative offense, a defensive-minded head coach.
Bottom 14 in pass rate last year?
Yeah, they were bottom 14 in pass rate. The Vikings were. Yeah. And so I think you think about what Matthew Stafford did last year in a similar offense.
Yeah.
And Kevin O'Connell, there is a little bit of experience there with Kirk. Yeah, I think that offense is going to explode. I think people are sleeping on it. Again, I love the weapons and I love the philosophy. So that's my bold prediction. It's a bold prediction that sounds bold, but I don't think is actually bold when you look at the numbers. Again, he threw 33 last year in a conservative offense.
Yeah.
For him to get 7 more over the course of a season,
it's not too much to ask.
No.
I feel the same way about my bold prediction. Y'all have set the bar high, but I'm going to try to maintain this level. Jamar Chase will not be the Bengals' #1 fantasy wide receiver.
Okay.
That will be T. Higgins. T. Higgins was the Bengals' #1 fantasy wide receiver the last 7 games of the season. He was better than Jamar Chase. He missed 3 games last year and struggled with injury. And we see how he finished the year. You saw what he did in Super Bowl 56. He had 100 yards 6 of his last 10 games. As I mentioned, better than Chase the last 7 weeks. He led the Bengals in targets and receptions per game. So I feel like the Bengals certainly have enough to go around. I know you're not as high on Joe Burrow as a lot of people are, given where he's being drafted.
Correct.
But I believe that even though Jamar Chase is the better receiver, the guy that's, obviously the more spectacular from a physical standpoint, and their #1 receiver, I think the better fantasy receiver this year is actually going to be T. Higgins. They have a connection there with Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I mean, Jamar Chase is big play dependent. He has the ability to be so, but I don't think that's that bold either. I mean, look, I have both guys inside my top 12 at wide receiver, obviously. Listen, I have Chase at 3. I have Higgins, I believe, at 10 right now. But still, I have no issue with saying T. Higgins is going to have a really, really good year. Roto Pat, your second bold prediction for the season.
I would say your guys' were immediately better than mine because they didn't involve betting against Tom Brady. So I made a cardinal sin there, a fatal mistake. But I can't, for some reason, shake the feeling.
You understand that hey, Pat, you understand that that whereas you may be betting against Tom Brady, I am betting on Kirk Cousins. So, you know, I mean, it's like, you know.
That's true.
People
but he's going to have the first 2,000-yard receiver in NFL history, Matthew, and Justin Jefferson. You're making a Justin Jefferson prediction.
You snuck in another bold one. I see you. That's a nice little bonus bold prediction there.
See, yeah, you're making a Jefferson bold prediction as much as Kirk Cousins, because that's how a bold Kirk Cousins prediction has to go down.
Yes,
so
correct.
Just hitch the wagon to Justin Jefferson. I think it's very smart. I have no idea if my second one is smart. And this is more of like kind of like a weird feeling I can't shake. That I think Jalen Waddle is going to outpoint Tyreek Hill in PPR leagues. And I see Michael is saying he's on the same ship. And we know this offense is going to have to be more underneath than even the Chiefs' was in 2021, or rather infamously, the two high safeties kind of forced Patrick Mahomes to go much more the short or intermediate routes. And Tyreek had a little success with that, but, the yards per catch, everything, the yards per catch is not a great metric, but everything that came way down for Tyreek Hill, I think there's room for that to fall in this offense that we just know is going to have to be yak focused. I mean, the Dolphins have talked about yak being like the single most important thing for their passing attack. And we know, Tyreek Hill, maybe the most gifted accelerator, obviously the best deep speed in the NFL, could be cut out for that role. But we also know Jalen Waddle, a first-round pick, had 140 targets his rookie season. He already has so much rapport with Tua Tagovailoa, a role that we already know for a fact he can excel in. We're pretty sure Tyreek Hill can excel in the role, and a very, very, very smart coaching staff. But it's just kind of like Tua is already in the role that we kind of need Tyreek Hill to have. And we have some data of Tyreek Hill with a pop-a-shot quarterback kind of guy with Alex Smith, where he was much more big play dependent. He had, so many big plays with Patrick Mahomes, but he wasn't really big play dependent. But I think he's going to be more like big play dependent with Tua Tagovailoa. And also, I don't know if this is a good stat or not really, but the Chiefs had 107 passing touchdowns over the past 3 years. The 49ers, where Mike McDaniel is coming from, had only 79. The Niners had only 15 more passing than rushing touchdowns over the past 3 years, where that number was 64 for the Chiefs. Where just so much more of the scoring is going to come on the ground and in this offense than Tyreek Hill is used to. And I just can't shake the feeling that we think Tyreek can adjust to this role, but we know Jalen Waddle has already excelled in this role. And I think it kind of comes down to like how the touchdown luck shakes out. And if that's the only variable, I just am feeling really good about Jalen Waddle this year over Tyreek Hill.
That is definitely bold, Pat. I will say this, like you were worried that they weren't bold enough. I think that is absolutely bold enough that Jalen Waddle will outscore what they signed Tyreek Hill to? Like $8 billion contract?
Matthew, was a lot of money.
It was a lot of money. It was Michael Smith money is what it was. It was Michael Smith. It was like Michael Smith Amazon money. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's the kind of money that they're looking at. Or like that's just, it's like, I don't know. And there are people out there saying like, oh yeah, Kaylee Hartung is going to outscore Michael Smith. That's my bold prediction. More airtime.
That's your number two?
Yeah, that's
your number. Okay.
Matthew, I was trying to think of somebody on the Amazon broadcast.
That's a big one, Matthew.
That's my number two. That's my bold prediction number two. Yes, Kaylee Hartung
I like your chances
over Michael
there.
Smith.
I like your chances.
No, listen, my bold prediction, and if you saw me on the Hall of Fame game or you picked up the Rotoworld Draft Guide, it shouldn't be a surprise. Jalen Hurts finishes the year as the #1 quarterback in fantasy. That is my bold prediction. We're supposed to go bold, right? Again, I go back to that second year that Josh Allen had in the NFL. We just came out of Jalen Hurts' second year. Josh Allen, all the criticisms with Josh Allen was the same as it was with Jalen Hurts. Mm-hmm. He can run, but he's inaccurate. Well, in his second year, Jalen Hurts, more passing yards, higher accuracy percentage, more rushing yards, same touchdowns, same interceptions, same touchdowns per game, I should say. Jalen Hurts over Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. Year 3, they gave Josh Allen Stephon Diggs. He became the #1 quarterback in fantasy. Year 3, they gave Jalen Hurts A.J. Brown. We know about it's one of the best offensive lines in football. It's actually a really easy schedule for the Eagles. Second year, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert as well, Nick Sirianni, second year in that system. Yeah, my bold prediction, Jalen Hurts finishes as the #1 quarterback in fantasy this year.
And Matthew, I'll just say there too, I'll just jump in on that real quick. like the A.J. Brown isn't just about having like an elite target for Jalen Hurts. It's also someone like the defense has to roll coverage to, like devote resources to. That will help Jalen Hurts with his legs. And obviously, as the guy who oversaw Jalen Hurts being on the cover of the magazine, I approve of your bold Jalen Hurts prediction.
Yeah, how high can Hurts fly? Matthew says number one.
Yeah, right. But to your, by the way, they also, well, they sort of have a running back by committee, but they don't have anyone that, you know, well, we got to get Dalvin Cook 17 touches. You know, they don't have a guy like that. So whatever, Gainwell and Boston Scott and Miles Sanders, it's fine. But I think more often than not, Jalen Hurts is either going to keep it himself when they get in close, or you know, throw a jump ball to A.J. Brown. And so, right, to your point, Pat, like just there's a lot of different paths for Jalen Hurts to score fantasy points this year. I currently have him at 4. Yahoo drafters are taking him at QB 8. I think they're way too low. When my love-hate list comes out, obviously Jalen Hurts is going to be a big love for me this year. And look, it's half the reason why I came, like NBC was like, you want to join Rotoworld? I'm like, I'm not sure. They handed me the magazine, and I'm like, I'm in.
Little did we know we were sealing the deal.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Javonte Williams is going to finish as a top 5 running back.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I know everybody's, you know, hyping up the Russell Wilson arrival and, you know, what it's going to do for Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy and the passing game and Russ going to cook and yada, yada, yada. Or even the fact that Melvin Gordon's still very much in the picture in Denver. I think in Denver, they're going to see what Seattle did, that Russell Wilson is not a quarterback that you can say, hey, run this timing, precision offense to perfection. He's more of an off-schedule kind of guy. He's more of a big play quarterback. They're going to realize that their best path to winning is running the football. And when they do run the football, if they don't already know it, they're going to realize that Javonte Williams is significantly better than Melvin Gordon, with all due respect. Javonte Williams damn near forced as many missed tackles last year as Jonathan Taylor did. And we know how much more Jonathan Taylor carried the ball than Javonte Williams did. He could also catch the ball. The dude is a violent runner who could also make people miss. Javonte Williams, big breakout at the running back position this year.
Look, I don't hate that one at all. I mean, there's we saw it, right? That game, I think it was against Kansas City, right? That Melvin Gordon missed 29 touches, 178 scrimmage yards. He scored a touchdown, almost 30 fantasy points. We saw the potential. I think everyone agrees the talent is there.
Yeah.
We expect the offense to be a lot more efficient and in scoring position more often with Russell Wilson. To me, Pat, the only question is Melvin Gordon. But whether he has a much more reduced role with a new coaching staff that has nothing invested in him, like, you know, the NFL kicked the tires on him, and he had to come back to Denver.
Yeah.
He was a free agent out there.
You got to play the best guys, man. You know, you could have him under contract all you want. Like, Javonte Williams is better than Melvin Gordon.
Yeah. So go ahead, Pat. What are you going to say?
Melvin Gordon, like you said, is the variable there. We did have NFL Network's James Palmer on the podcast where he said it looks like much more of like a 1A, 1B situation where it was like 50-50 last year. He said this year it does appear clear that Javonte is the 1A. And Michael, this is kind of the same point made with Jalen Hurts. Now that Russell Wilson's there, I mean, he's not going to be facing defenses knew last year the Broncos had to run the ball, and he was still posting those insane metrics, like you said. Just such a better overall environment for Javonte Williams this year.
Hey, Roto Pat, that was pretty bold of you, man. You did a good job. Don't undersell yourself.
Yeah.
No, you came with the boldness.
I say I have these thoughts. I just don't usually share them, but you know, you got to do it.
Well,
And, you know,
we won't hold it against you.
This is a safe space.
Yeah, we won't hold it.
This is a safe space.
And so I look forward to Leonard Fournette finishing as the RB7 now, but that's neither here nor there.
All right, man. We appreciate it, Roto Pat. Thank you so much. All right, Matthew Berry.
There you go, man.
That just about does it for us, man. I mean, the only thing left for you is your ride or die, but we're going to hold that in your back pocket. We're going to tease your ride or die.
August 22nd. I've been getting a lot of people ask me on Twitter, hey, when are you going to do a podcast? When can I listen to the podcast? And the answer is August 22nd. We will have a new show that will be on Peacock. It will be on the new NFL on NBC YouTube channel, and it will be available wherever you get podcasts. That very first show, August 22nd, I will reveal the 2022 Fantasy Ride or Die.
Fantasy Ride or Die.
My Fantasy Ride or
Die. I'm your real Ride or Die because you stuck with me for this season.
Appreciate you, my friend.
I should have Peter King'd you just now.
I know.
You're stuck with me for this season. That'll do it for the Rotoworld Fantasy Football Draft Guide Show. Oh, hey.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, there you go.
There you go. Thank you.